Venezuela, Rodriguez, who signed off on this deal.
But do we believe it was signed off on?
To anything in exchange for
do
that.
we think there was a signed-off deal of any sort at all?
We don't know. You know, we'll have to see what Venezuela has to say today. Yeah. We'll have to see what Venezuela has to say today. I mean, you've seen this in the past with trade deals with President Trump, where he has said that the other side of the transaction has agreed to things, and then we just can't get confirmation from the other side that they agreed to that particular thing for days or sometimes weeks.
And it also suggests that they're in agreement. If it's a payment, for taking Maduro, for example, from them, that would suggest that there are people in that government.
Well, she was a Maduro ally.
Is it a payment
that's why it doesn't make sense.
Like, is it a payment for?
The question is, what is it a payment for?
Yeah, is it a payment for some of the things that were
For her being able to stay. She's not the leader of choice, obviously, because she's still a Maduro ally.
This is a mafia situation. I'll let you stay if you give me oil,
but let you stay, but you have
That's the question. Was there an
you
agreement?
have to guarantee you have to guarantee free and fair elections within the next year, I think. It's Eamon, John Thune, the majority leader, said there's no serious talk about a military intervention in Greenland.
Well, I mean, there was serious talk by the White House press secretary on the record yesterday.
I know, but that's not going to be the case.
I don't know whether he can. That's the view, I think, in the Republican Party more than that. And this could be more negotiating with a lot of bluster on the front end and really wanting to buy. But then people point out we owe $40 trillion right now. I mean, we could probably get the money to buy Greenland. The Journal says that. Says, why do you want it? Just you can get closer to Greenland, get everything you want without going.
Right, and without
maybe this is just you ask for the world and you settle.
But if this is the case, why doesn't the White House just say this is?
Because they never do. You've been watching it. You had 4 years to watch this stuff play out the first time. Now you had another year this time. It's never going to satisfy.
Is that defensible?
It's never going to satisfy. It's never going to be defensible for you. But you just should.
But you're saying
with the cat, sooner or later when you clap, the cat just goes like this. With you, it's the same reaction every time.
Yes,
I know. Well, but eventually,
it's gotta be.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's going to lull you to sleep.
Why did when the Biden administration clapped, you were already like this? So that's the only thing.
The only thing I will say is the NATO reaction. It's not a situation where you want to completely alienate your allies.
This is true. This is true. It's on the same tectonic plate as the United States. I mean, it's really. It's not on the European side.
One quick question here.
This is very old, but it does look almost like an
guys. One quick question.
That mindset.
Anna?
Yeah, I was just going to say one quick question that folks raised with me. I was talking to two former high-ranking U.S. intelligence officials last night, and when you talk about a NATO ally attacking another NATO ally, that's the end of the NATO alliance. That's a huge division between the United States and Europe. And one of the questions that they raised with me is whether or not the U.S. military would follow an order by the President of the United States to attack a NATO ally in a war of territorial aggression. Given the questionable legality of that, would U.S. military leaders execute an order from the President? Remember, U.S. military trains alongside the forces from Denmark and Greenland, so a lot of those folks in the U.S. military who are in Greenland know their counterparts in the other military very closely and trained with them for years. Would they follow an order to then shoot those people? That's an open question here. Right. And the fact that you're looking at that is very, very stark and dramatic. And I think the White House has really raised a whole host of big questions here.
Right. And now you sound like how many Democrats were that Mark Kelly is dealing with the repercussions of saying don't follow orders from the commander-in-chief as well. Now we know also, Eamon, that there were deaths down in that operation. It just apparently once again affirmed by the Trump administration no American deaths, but even 60 or so deaths in the extracted.
The report yesterday was 75.
75. Exactly.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell. Thank you for joining. We're live streaming on Rumble, on YouTube, and also my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. We're simulcasting on X Spaces. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Please share the links and ask your social media to follow me. All these videos are for free. I have thousands of videos for free telling you how I'm trading the market, my perspective on what's going on in the news, and also about what's going on with your health. So please pay attention, take my advice, and you probably can navigate through the tumultuous markets and also improve your health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support the work that I do. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. You can be a paid member to my Patreon channel or my Substack channel. I have a new feature on my website called Paper. It's under Broadcast. Under Broadcast, you can see radio, live, and also paper. Radio is the audio podcast archive. Live is the live streams, both versions, the large picture version and the telemetry version. And you can take a look at paper, which is generating news that's going on in the world. So take a look at that, help support the work by donating. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. In addition, you can follow me on TikTok, GETTR, and X. And please follow me on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. So there's lots of ways to follow me. Share the links, helps support the work and grow the channel. With that said, I have very high quality products. If you take these products daily, what will happen is that your immune system, your endocrine system will improve. You're going to slow down the aging process. This is something that I've been doing for a very long time. If you take my advice, you will have more longevity and vitality. Please go to my store and get the structural nanosilver soaps. This will help to cleanse your skin and neutralize because it's made from structural nanosilver. You can get it in peppermint. You can also get it in lavender, charcoal tea tree, and lemongrass. Get a few bars for your household. Use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. It's all caps, discount, the number 5. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Also, it's really important to detoxify your body. Take zeolite. This will bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. You do this daily, and what will happen is your tissues will perform better. That means your immune system and your endocrine system will perform better. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue and drink filtered water. It's that simple. Do that every day. So please go to my store and get the zeolite. This zeolite you can take every day. Some other zeolite you can't. This zeolite you can. It's very high quality. Take it every day. 3 small drops underneath your tongue. Make sure you use discount 5. All right, let's listen into what Senator Kelly is saying. This is live now.
In the Intelligence Committee, I'm going to show up here every day and do my job. And if that means I'm going to point out things that this administration is doing that are wrong, that are not in the best interest of this country, and the same thing goes for the Secretary of Defense and the Department of Defense, I will do that. I'm not going to be intimidated. I'm not going away.
Senator Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. We definitely appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
And of course, I do want to mention that
Senator Kelly is positioning himself to run for president in 2028 election. That's what he's doing. He's going to be a blowhard saying Trump is all bad. And he says that, oh, it's wrong in his opinion. Doesn't mean it's wrong. He has opinions. So what? Okay, Senator. But the thing is, that doesn't mean your opinion's right. Doesn't mean it's wrong just because he thinks it is. All right, let's continue.
in the North Atlantic pursuant to a warrant issued by a U.S. federal court after being tracked by U.S. CGC Monroe. Now, again, important to note, we are talking about a Venezuela-linked ship that is now registered under a Russian flag. All of this here We're going to continue to follow as we get more information from Fox News Digital, and of course our different affiliates and officials just like this one. Right now, going to head to a break at 9:39 on the East Coast and 6:39 on the West Coast. We'll be right back.
All right, so the big news for today, as of this moment, it's the oil tanker being seized that was going to, it looks like it was going to Russia. All right, now, natural gas is trading at 3.5 futures. I'm long natural gas, all right? I suspect that natural gas could go as much as 3.7, and then you might want to hedge if you're going long and do a short position, because it probably is going to go to 3.7 then come back down, all right? But we're still in the winter season. It's been pretty cold, all right, in definitely in some states in the United States. So natural gas should go up, plus the use of AI using more energy, and the feedstocks for that energy are coal, typically coal and natural gas. All right, so natural gas futures should be somewhat elevated. I'm a little surprised it's not higher. I was expecting a higher 3 handle, like a 3.8, 3.9, maybe a 4, 4.1. But it's been trending down. It was trading at around 3.4. Now it's bouncing back up to 3.5. So right now I have a long position, but I probably will start putting some short positions in at 3.7. Now for oil, that's trading at $56.36. Before we went into Venezuela and took Maduro, it was trading around 56, right? Then it went back, it went up to 57, 58, and then came back down, all right? I was expecting that the operation that we were going to do was going to last for about 4 days, all right? And I was expecting that there would be about a $4 blip, go to 60, maybe 61, 62, depending on where it was at from baseline, and then come back down. This operation was so fast that we kind of missed that opportunity. Now, in terms of more oil on the market, Venezuela's production is not that good. They have a lot of oil, but what can actually be produced and shipped is only a fraction of what they used to do 25 years ago. So there's going to be a lot of investment that will be needed to get it back to production levels that are meaningful to affect the oil price. In addition, their crude is heavy crude. We produce light crude. So it has to go through different types of refining processes and more energy. The thing is that if you want to have different products of petroleum, you'll be able to what is called cracking, but the actual breaking of the molecules with heavy crude, you get actually more out of it. The whole spectrum you get. If you're only light crude, you only get a certain spectrum of distillates or certain molecule sizes. All right. So the point here is that the quality or the type of crude is different. Now, will it affect oil prices in the short term in a fundamental way? So you can look at this from a fundamental point of view or from a behavioral point of view. I come from the perspective that markets work in a behavior, not fundamental. Markets are never in equilibrium. That's my take on it, and it's all behavioral. All right, but if you look at it from a fundamental point of view, the oil production is years away out of Venezuela to make it to the point where it's going to suppress oil prices. Now, what's keeping oil down at about $56 a barrel for WTI is that there's a lot of oil out there. There's a lot of inventory. Part of it is because OPEC Plus produced a lot in 2025. Now, I think that there was an agreement between Trump and MDS to actually increase the oil price, help to suppress inflation, bring down energy costs by increasing oil production. Saudis also wanted to get market share by producing more oil. And this would help to, when you bring down the oil price on the open market, it's actually reducing the money flows for the war effort to Putin. In addition, it reduces the money for the coffers for Iran. So there's a geopolitical reason what's going on here. And then there is also an inflationary reason why there's so much oil out there. Now, if oil stays at 56, you're going to have producers that are in shale starting to reduce their production. And over time, there will be a reduction of that inventory and the price will start to go up. Some oil analysts are saying, oh, it's going to 40, it's going to 40, it's going to be a 40 handle, like a 45. It can't sustain that. In addition, Saudi Arabia needs the oil for Brent crude to be much higher to be able to keep their government afloat, because it's the oil revenue that is most of the revenue. Now they're trying to diversify their economy, but they're not there yet. So their stock market isn't doing so well. So what do? They decided to open it up to other investors. They were very narrow in terms of who can invest in Saudi Arabia's stock market. Well, they've opened it up last night. All right. I don't know if retail can get in yet, but the news that came out last night is that a larger investor base will be able to invest into Saudi Arabia. And part of the reason is that their stock market is not doing so well because they've limited the number of people that can invest in it. All right, so they're opening up their markets. Well, that's just good. So short term, oil is going to be suppressed probably at the 50 handle. For US WTI, 55 is one of the break-even points. It can't stay there for very long, or shale production starts to diminish. If it goes to 40, if you take a look at the oil charts, when it goes to 40, it doesn't stay there for very long and then comes back up. So if it goes to 40 handle, 45 or 48, that's a perfect time to buy. But it ain't gonna stay there. Now, I think fair value for oil is approximately, in a trading range, about 55 to 60. All right. It's much better for oil producers at the 60 range. But so if it's trading at 56, this is probably a time to buy. Now, I'm long to oil, and I think that the trading range is going to be 56 to 60. Now, people are saying, well, what happens if the Ukrainian war has some sort of peace agreement between Zelensky and Putin? There'll be more oil on the market, and because Russia can actually produce, right, that will bring Brent crude down further, and OPEC is going to have to cut. And when they start cutting, then you're going to start seeing oil start to creep back up, back to a fair value. All right. So if there is a peace agreement, we would probably see a $4 shock in the going down with the oil price. So if it's trading, let's say Brent's trading at 60, you might see Brent trading at 56. If Brent's trading at 56, then you're talking about a $50 WTI, maybe 51, somewhere in there. And then once OPEC starts to make their adjustment based on what Russia is putting on the market legally, then everything's okay. If there's no peace, oil's going to go up. Oil's going to continue to go up because it's sanctioned oil. It's illegal oil, all right, if there's no peace. Now, the other geopolitical headwind when it comes to oil, the oil price, is Iran. If Iran starts to simmer with conflict, just because of the unknown in the Middle East, and then oil will start to creep back up. So I think there's a higher probability that Iran and Putin do not come to the table with peace. They probably will come to the table with war. Chances are this year we're going to have increased price for oil because of instability, but it's going to be a wave. You know, if you watch what happened last year, most of the wave of oil was related to tariffs in Iran. All right. This year, I don't think it's going to be so much tariffs, but it's definitely going to be midterm election and geopolitical instability. And I don't feel that the geopolitical instability has solved itself for 2026. So we're probably going to see oil start to creep back up and then come back down. Another way, it might actually go down a little bit and then come back up and then go down. There's going to be a wave here. But if you pay attention, you'll be able to make money both ways. All right? So right now, I am longing oil and I'm longing natural gas. But I will start hedging for natural gas if it gets to about 3.7. I'll probably start nibbling at some hedge positions for shorting. Now with the S&P 500 is trading at 6,950. I have at this moment in time, I have a year-end target for the S&P 500 for 2026 at 7,400 if the economy falters for the jobs. But if it doesn't and job creation is decent, then I think the S&P 500 is going to be near 8,000, maybe more. Okay, so that there's this range, 7,400 to 8,000. And it depends on the job market. Got to pay attention to what's going on with experienced workers being able to have mobility to move to a different job. And you have to pay attention to the youth. The ones that are coming out of college or high school, are they getting hired? How much of AI implementation is job creation versus job destruction? That's a big unknown, and I think that's part of the reason why that the S&P 500 could potentially have a low return and end at the end of the year at 7,400. But if the Federal Reserve keeps on reducing rates, which at least one cut is going to be happening, some people think 2 cuts, that should be bullish. But there is that headwind about AI in job creation. So pay attention, but that's what I think is going to be happening with the S&P 500. Right now, VIX is trading at 15. The last big spike that we were seeing was in, I think it was December, early December for VIX. I suspect that we're going to have a spike at the end of January or beginning of February for the VIX. So we'll see a little bit of a shock that happens in the S&P 500, I suspect, at the end of January, the beginning of February. All right, that gives you that like 2.5 month periodicity. All right, so you go, so if it's if the VIX for the S&P 500. So volatility increase at the beginning of December, then, for 2 months, like a 2-month periodicity, then you're talking at the beginning of February, when the next heteroscedastic spike happens with VIX. If the VIX spike is higher than the previous spike in December, then we have a problem with the S&P 500 and it's going to be trading sideways and start to drift down. If the spike is less, it's going to be very bullish, and the probability of going to 8,000 for year end is much higher. So we're gonna have, in terms of probability, by the end of January, beginning of February, we'll have a decent probability where we're going to be ending up at the end of the year. Now, when I take a look at the discount window for the Federal Reserve, it was accessed by a group of people or one group. I don't know, because the Federal Reserve doesn't publish that, in real time. But there was a lot of activity near the end of the year of 2025, in the tune of almost $100 billion when you add it all up. Actually, it was more than 100 billion. And there was also access to the discount window where they were trading for repo, they were trading some institution or institutions, we don't know if it's plural or not, but someone or a group of people were accessing the window. And for that repo, they gave treasuries and mortgage-backed securities and then received cash. It was overnight lending. It all happened it started happening in June, September, November, and then December. A big activity in December. Now, if you look at the amount of money that was flowing for overnight, it is reminiscent of what happened during COVID in terms of magnitude. And the last time that happened before COVID, all right, was during Lehman. So the activity that was accessed by the open window, someone was worried about liquidity. Now, it just so happens that right when we took Maduro, accessing the window started to go down. Now, that could be coincidental, but I have a feeling that the reason why the window was accessed was because it has something to do with either the bond market dealing with Venezuela or something to do with energy, counterparty risk, or something to do with counterparty risk with Chinese firms that may be having systemic issues because of what Trump did with Venezuela. News came out 2 days ago that the Chinese government was telling firms and banks to stress test to understand what their counterparty risk was with Venezuela. So I don't know. It could be just a coincidence. Also, what's very telling to me is during this time period, near the end of the year, we're talking, December 31st, right? And, early part of this year, Vicente was incognito. You wonder why. And he might have been behind the scenes on the phones trying to reduce this liquidity issue. Now, it looks like the liquidity issue went away. And maybe it was just to bolster up any potential shock that would have happened because of the operation that the United States did on Venezuela. Maybe. We don't know, because the Federal Reserve doesn't tell you why these parties access the discount window. And this is all okay. This ties into VIX. Remember what I said about VIX? The periodicity is usually 2 to 2.5 months, sometimes 1 month, but usually 2 to 2.5 months. So the next big shock for VIX is going to be at the end of January, beginning of February. If it's lower than the previous spike, then we're okay. There's no liquidity problem. But if it spikes much higher, then whatever I was seeing at the discount window at the end of the year and the beginning of this year is starting to rear its head again. That means there's systemic risk. So this is the reason why you have to pay attention on what. Now, these magnitudes of accessing the window, again, in the last 25 years, this has only happened in 3 epochs. The current one that we're in, during COVID, and Lehman. So when I say that there's a problem, there's definitely a high potential of a liquidity problem. If you don't believe me, just go to the chart that I did on Fred. All right, Fred is the Federal Reserve data set that comes from the St. Louis Fed. And I did a video. I think it's episode 4 or 5 for Warsaw. Take a look at that. All right. But last night, no access to the window. So it seems like it kind of, whatever happened, went away. I suspect that people were warned that Trump was going to hit Venezuela, and they wanted to make sure they had plenty of liquidity, probably because of exposure in currency or bond market or oil or something, and that we're okay. But if that's not the case and it's something else, some people were saying maybe there were a bunch of shorts for silver for the hedge funds and that there was some counterparty risk for that. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. No one really knows unless you work at the Fed, right? And if you told, you probably would lose your job. So no one really knows what's really going on with the window being accessed with so much money being transferred over. It's a lot. It was a lot. $100 billion. And now, in terms of going to the window, it's usually very minuscule. It was a lot that was overnighted for liquidity to a group of people or to one bank or one firm, who knows. So the question is this a one-off? Is it idiosyncratic and everything is copacetic now? Or is this a building of risk that will rear itself again in February? We don't know. And depending on what happens, depends on how we trade through it. But those are some of the risks to think about. I'm pretty sure that no one's telling you this. Just like no one told you at the very beginning what the hell was going to be happening in 2020. Just like no one told you, other than me, on what the aftershock was. And it's still happening. I keep on reminding people, if you're 40 years of age or older, chances are 30% of the people that are in that cohort group are going to get early onset of dementia because of what we went through in 2020. And there's different reasons for it, due to the inoculation and due to the pathogen. 30% of people that are over 40 are going to get early onset of dementia, and there's a spectrum. Some it's going to be somewhat benign, somewhat manageable. Others it's going to be really bad. And there's 3 types of these individuals. Ones that will have ischemic because of poor blood flow. They'll be either microclotting or microbleeding. That's about 75% of them. 24.9% of the others that are part of this 30% group that I'm talking about. So 24.9% of 30% of people that are 40 years of age or older, they're going to have things like amyloidosis and Alzheimer's and all this. And then about 0.1% or less will have prion disease. So you're going to see a big part of the American population that can't think. And if you think I'm wrong, just take a look at your cohort group within this range. Look at your coworkers, or look at your family members, or listen to people around your community. Are they having a problem talking? Are they having a problem reading? Are they having a problem putting long strands of thought together? If so, this is the sign. That's the sign of it. Or they're forgetting passwords. They're forgetting, and they're not as fluent with writing. These are all signs of it. Now, I warned people in 2020 what was going to happen. Autoimmune diseases, dysregulation of the immune system, AIDS-like syndrome, cancers, dementia. It's all happening. And I said it in 2020. More accurate than anyone. More accurate than anyone. And including all of those celebrity docs. So with the point that I'm making here is you may want to pay attention to what I'm saying about the discount window.
have some breaking news on the Venezuela oil numbers. Brian Sullivan joins us for more on that. Brian, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Here we are at the Goldman Sachs Energy, Clean Tech, and Utilities Conference in Miami, Florida. And I've got some breaking news from sources close to the White House. You saw the news maybe last night that the president put out on his social media that Venezuela would sell the United States 30 to 50 million barrels of oil. Well, I'm here to report that is only the first tranche, that it will continue indefinitely. So oil sales from Venezuela to the U.S. and the Western world will be more than 50 million barrels of oil. That was not a one-time thing. That was not a one-time announcement that the sales from Venezuela to the United States and other Western nations will continue indefinitely. So 30 to 50 million barrels, which is roughly 15 to 25 super tankers worth of oil, that will continue indefinitely. Here's some other breaking news. As part of that deal, Venezuelan sanctions will be rolled back. They will be dialed back, kind of a carrot, if you will, according to my sources, over that. So in other words, Venezuela will sell the United States and the Western world sanctioned oil. Oil that would have normally gone to, say, China is now going to be sold or rerouted to the United States or other Western refiners that can handle the heavy sour crude that is Venezuela. The proceeds from those sales will largely go back to Venezuela or the United States. But the breaking news is that we're going to have more than 50 million barrels of Venezuelan oil by far sold, that oil will be sold to the United States and Western nations, and some of that money
Hey, Brian,
will be
hey, Brian,
back to Venezuela.
we're confused. I mean, that's a different story than we got to this point where it was going to be oil that was given to the United States. And then we were going to sell it.
the money.
What do you know? So this is,
So,
they'll just sell it to
this
us
is- this is
instead of
all
China?
happening- This is all happening real time. This is breaking news. I don't believe it's out anywhere else. I'm here to report it. Sources close to the White House. I just off the phone minutes ago are telling me that the United States is going to acquire more than 50 million barrels of oil. That is the first tranche as part of that deal, long-term deal. Venezuelan sanctions, it's not out anywhere else. Venezuelan sanctions will be rolled back. This is happening right now.
This is
Brian,
very big news.
what I'm trying to understand is there's a this is part of a negotiation. Who has negotiated this deal on the Venezuelan side? How is this
I
even
thought
working?
they said we were getting this, the president said they were giving this oil to us and we were gonna sell it, and then the proceeds were gonna be used to help Venezuela and the United States. This is them selling to the United States and other countries sanctioned oil. This is completely different. Are they fixing that story, Brian? Because it was a weird story, we were talking about it earlier. Was it blackmail that they're giving us, that it was
Or was it to make up for assets that have been
I
seized
don't
from
wanna
US
use-
companies?
Yeah, I've got all three of my good friends talking at the same time. Hold on, let me take one question at a time. First to Joe. The story is evolving. I don't want to say fixing the story. What we saw from the president last night, 30 to 50 million barrels of oil, that sort of implied maybe a one-time assumption of that Venezuelan oil. What I'm reporting right now from the White House is that that will be a continued source of Venezuelan oil. I don't know the price at which we will acquire that oil, whether it will be given to us or whether we will simply buy it at a discount. There's not many refineries that can accommodate this heavy crude sour oil, but this is oil, and I think Becky mentioned this is oil that would have normally been rerouted to, say, a China. This is previously sanctioned oil. Remember, about 1/3 of Venezuelan oil, not all Venezuelan oil, about 1/3 is sanctioned. This is the sanctioned oil that would have gone to China or another nation that is now going to be rerouted to the U.S. or the Western world. The proceeds will be put largely back into Venezuela for the benefit of the Venezuelan people and help rebuild some of their capital infrastructure.
So, Brian, here's what I'm kind of reading on this.
So we're propping up the government for oil.
If they are now saying
oil.
that we're
That's
going to be getting all the oil that used to go to China, this almost sounds like it's a tit for tat with China saying, we're not going to give you any more access to rare material or rare earths, and now we're trying to fix that. But this is a global play for major resources, and commodities
Exactly.
that are.
And this is the reason why I was
all
saying,
of this.
this is the reason why I was saying about Venezuela. This is the first piece of World War III. This, on the chessboard of World War III, the war between the United States and China, Venezuela is the first pawn that just was moved. We made sure that we controlled the oil supply, made sure that we're controlling the around the Panama Canal, and also chokehold oil going to China. So we're choking them off. This is the beginnings of World War III. This is it. This is also the reason why Trump keeps on saying we got to have Greenland. We're not playing footsie anymore with Denmark. We need to have the full control of our hemisphere, northern and southern. That's what's going on in South America, but also going on in the Arctic. So what? So what? We are moving towards World War III. And Venezuela is the first piece of the chessboard that was just moved. And it's a brilliant idea. Okay, so the way I understand what's going on with the oil is that the United States is going to buy the oil, probably at a discount. All right? Now, when they buy it at a discount, and then we're going to refine it, it's not going to China. And that money that we bought the oil for is going to go in to actually help rebuild Venezuela. So instead of we just giving Venezuela money, we're getting something out of it, and that's the oil.
From what you're hearing is those sales will simply be made to us and to other of our allies versus going to China. And we don't know exactly what the price is for those, but this is not something like getting our money back for anything that's been taken from U.S. assets in the past when they nationalized all those assets.
Yes, I'm gonna give you some more details because I want to get it right here on what sources close to the White House just sent to me. The United States is selectively rolling back sanctions to enable the transport and sale of Venezuelan crude and oil products to global markets. Those funds will be dispersed for the benefit of the Venezuelan people. The sales begin immediately with the anticipated sale of 30 to 50 million barrels. They will continue indefinitely. There is no mention of price. What price that oil, whether it's to Joe's point, sort of given to us,
free.
apologies for the noise behind us.
The implication initially was that for some reason they were giving the United States 30 to 50, and Andrew rightly pointed out that's impossible. This makes no sense. It would have to be in repayment for something, or
But that's what we
to
thought.
stay in power. It brought up all kinds of quid pro quo with whether Delcy made the deal so she could remain in power. I mean, it brought up all kinds of. It's totally different if they're just freeing up what they used to sell to China and now selling it to us and to other Western nations. That's totally different than getting 50 million barrels of free oil and using $3 billion.
Oil is drifting down slightly. It's at 56.35.
You asked me for specific names on who the U.S. is making this deal with. I do not have Adelcy Rodriguez. What I do have are interim Venezuelan authorities. This deal is being made between the United States Department of Energy and interim Venezuelan authorities.
Right.
Breaking news, we're going to reroute that sanctioned, that's key, sanctioned oil.
Right.
And it will be more than 50 million barrels a day.
Real quick, by the way, Brent down marginally right now, but more importantly, you think about the companies that can refine this oil, and to the extent this is an opportunity for them, maybe we can put some of the big energy stocks up on the screen.
Valero would probably pop on this news. Again, this
That's
is
what I
all
was gonna ask.
happening in real time. I don't have any computers or anything around me.
All right, let's just take an intraday of Valero real quickly. Take a look at.
You're looking at Valero. It
And
is
you're right,
popping
Brian,
up.
it's up by 3.3%.
3%. Marathon Petroleum up about 1%. If I remember,
Phillips
Elliott
66 and
Management had
Valero
bought part of
would be the
Citgo,
two
which I do think
names.
was one of the companies that actually can refine some of this stuff. The
Correct.
subsidiary of Citgo.
Elliott Management's in a proxy fight with Phillips 66, but Valero, PSX, Phillips 66 to a lesser extent, some of the other refiners would be. I'm going to have more. Listen, Chris Wright's about ready to speak here at the Goldman Sachs Energy Clean Tech and Utilities Conference. I'll get more headlines we have on this. This is breaking news. And we're going to be interviewing the Secretary of Energy exclusively in Power Lunch live today in the 2 o'clock hour, although maybe it'll happen earlier now, I don't know.
Okay.
Brian, this is fantastic. Thank you for bringing all of this to you. We look forward to hearing that interview later and getting more details on this.
This season, you've got places to go, people to see, and things to do. You may have already gotten vaccinated for flu and COVID-19, but other respiratory
currently can produce right now, given the current decrepit state of its facilities. The Secretary said this morning that he sees the country being able to double in a reasonable amount of time that production, adding several hundred million barrels of production annually beyond what it could do right now. They are stressing also that the money from the sales of Venezuelan oil would go to U.S. accounts first and then be funneled back into Venezuela to, as the Secretary said, support the Venezuelan people. Now, how that would work, there are a lot of questions surrounding that. We will hear more from President Donald Trump later today when he signs some executive orders, and of course from the White House as well, to perhaps add a little bit more clarity. But the U.S. is making clear that it would like to control not only the flow of the crude, but the proceeds as well, to exert as much leverage as it can over the new government of Delcy Rodriguez.
Michael, should we expect more seizures of ships on the high seas?
Well, to the extent that any ship tries to evade this blockade or is subject to U.S. sanctions and trying to either enter or depart Venezuelan waters, that should be the expectation. We heard from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth today that, yes, any Venezuelan oil tanker anywhere is subject to this blockade. So if they are operating without permission, they should expect some form of interdiction by U.S. forces, by either the U.S. Coast Guard or by the U.S. military. It was the U.S. military that actually acted in the North Sea, which is where the first tanker that you mentioned, Paul, the MV Bella, was seized between Iceland and Scotland. The other tanker was seized. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said in a social media post somewhere in the Caribbean by Coast Guard forces.
Before we let you go, Mike, just a quick question, whether the president, the White House has said anything more about Greenland.
Well, last night we did hear from the White House that President Donald Trump would not rule out perhaps taking control of Greenland by force. We heard Secretary of State Marco Rubio indicating that doing so by force is not really in the cards. They would prefer to exert control, perhaps by purchasing the territory. And of course, this has set off a lot of alarms among European allies in NATO and across the European Union, and especially Denmark, which is in control and is the sovereign nation overseeing Greenland right now. Now, the question is, what does it mean for NATO? And the president today sought to assure that he stands by the alliance.
All right, Michael, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
The oil market is really, the news in the oil market is pretty significant. But I'm looking at natural gas, not much of a move. It's at 3.5 right now for futures for nat gas. And for WTI, it's trading at 56 handle. So everything's pretty stable right now. Now the question is will it drift down to 54? And again, a low 50 handle isn't very good for energy producers. Now, the oil that's being shipped over to the United States from Venezuela, refiners may actually benefit depending on, the products that they make from the oil. If they're getting it at a better price and they refine the products and then sell those products at a decent profit, they downstream energy producers may actually benefit from this. Like the refineries. So, okay. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's really important to boost up that innate immune system. How do you do it? Get the Max 35, Max 14, or Cleanse. Max 14 is 14 parts per million. Max 35 is 35 parts per million. And Cleanse is 30 parts per million. All right? They're all at different price points based on your affordability. Now, what you do is you take them the same way, all right? Take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle 20 seconds, swallow. What it does is it neutralizes your oral cavity, neutralizes your oral pharynx, helps to maintain your mucosal barrier, and helps the health of the epithelial cells. When you do that, it's boosting up your immune system. Do this every day. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or 2 a day. Do the same thing until everything is better and you go back to your baseline dosage. I've been doing this protocol for over 5 years. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Do this every day, boost up that immune system. And it's the first pillar of my core protocol. We're going to be talking about it, but it's really simple. Multivitamin, probiotic, the Max 35 cleanse or Max 14, C60 is the second pillar, third pillar, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, and the fourth pillar, boomer boost. And that will, when you combine those all together, you're targeting all of the major components of aging, and you slow down the aging process. It's really simple. And you're boosting up your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. Use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift. And guess what? When you get older, your gene expression changes. Your epigenetic profile changes. That's part of the aging process. You can help build muscle by taking Myotrol. Myotrol helps with the gene expression to build muscle. When you get older, it's harder to build muscle. It's harder to maintain muscle. Myotrol will help you build muscle and maintain it. And it reduces atrophy. This will help with many things. If you work your musculature, you're going to improve your cardiovascular health and your bone density and your posture. If you have better back muscles, you're going to improve your lymphatic flow and your venous return flow. If you have better musculature, especially in your calves, you're going to have better return to your heart. In addition, with better blood flow, you're going to have better brain function. So it's really important to do cardio and resistance training. About 65% of your workout should be resistance training, 35% should be cardio. Or you can do like a 70-30 split. But you want to do more resistance training than cardio. Your overall health will be actually better and you'll slow down the aging process. But doing back muscles is really important, super important. But taking Myotrol, because of the polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans in here, will help with the gene expression to maintain and build muscle. So it's really important to take, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. Now, if you're an athlete, younger or older, you will benefit from taking Myotrol. It will help you to recover quicker after your workout and to build the strength that you need for your sport. So please go to my store and get the Myotrol. It's very important, very powerful supplement, and it's a great way to get healthy.
Is lower. Right now, the NASDAQ Composite Index at 54 points. That's up 0.2%. Now, for those of you on radio, I have in my hot little hands a Metro card.
There you go.
Does that have any money still left on it?
I don't remember. It's like it expired a couple of years ago, but New York City stopped using Metro cards as of last week, so it's going to be tap and go. But on secondary sites like eBay, these are going for anywhere from $6 to $5,000.
Wait, why $5,000?
Some of the Metro cards, like the original ones in their packaging, are worth a lot more, and then they had special promotions with the like the notorious BIG insert.
Okay, collector's items.
But I am willing to part with this.
Really?
So under the highest bidder. You know where to get me. Anyway, we check the markets all day long. Right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Scarlett.
Hey, John Tucker, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Scarlett Flu, Paul Sweeney. We're here in the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. We're streaming live on YouTube as well, so check this out there. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang says the artificial intelligence industry always needs more energy. On the sidelines of the annual consumer tech event, CES, Jensen Huang and Siemens CEO Roland Busch spoke exclusively for Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow on their AI partnership.
From Hopper to Blackwell, we increased energy efficiency by 10x. From Blackwell to Rubin, we increased energy efficiency again by 10x. And that translates directly to our customers' revenues, because in the case of an AI factory, whatever factory size you have, you're limited by the power.
All right, that was Jensen Huang. He is head of NVIDIA, and Siemens CEO Roland Busch, speaking exclusively with Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow of the AI partnership out at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. Let's get the latest reporting from Vegas. Caroline Hyde joins us. She's out there. She's the B-Tech co-anchor for Bloomberg News. Caroline, it just seems like, you're listening to Mr. Wang, Mr. Bush, the need for AI and the spending on AI shows no real signs of slowing yet. Is that the vibe you're getting out there?
That is very much the vibe we're getting. We heard from Lisa Su yesterday as well, CEO of AMD, saying in the next few years, you're going to have to 100x the amount of compute that we currently have. Her stock's still falling today, I might add. And so many people may be factoring in this extraordinary scale at which we're likely to see the compute needs still ramp up. And it's having a marked effect on certain company stocks. Like I'm sure you were covering yesterday and into today, SanDisk. It is up 1,000% from its lows back in April, but it's up almost 50% in the first few trading days of the year. This is all about a shortage in memory storage. We are seeing still the fact that we're worrying about energy, as Jensen says. We're worrying about memory, as you're seeing impacting Samsung stock as well. We had a Samsung executive on the network yesterday saying, look, we're going to have to see a hike in prices because supply is just so tight. And yet still people question whether we're in some sort of bubble. But all I'm hearing is the infrastructure just needs to get ever bigger. And we kind of need to get on board with that.
Yeah, speaking of memory chip makers, Micron, the biggest U.S. memory chip maker, jumping 240% last year and up about 10% yesterday.
Nice.
So just an example of that. So Caroline, the Consumer Electronics Show, Paul and I were reminiscing how once upon a time it meant big screen TVs and other gadgets that companies dreamt up but consumers may or may not want to sign on for. Is that still what's happening at the CES, or has it turned into a high-level discussion on chips and AI?
I think I'm managing to walk both sides. We're still seeing those big unveils and discussions coming from NVIDIA CEO, from AMD CEO, from Qualcomm CEO. They're talking about what's inside these electronics or what's inside the compute that is needed to foster these electronics. But then you have Samsung, which is very much in the AI trade with its chips, but also unveiling the latest, greatest Samsung frame or the latest TV that has, you can see all around the curvature of it, or the fact that they are still trying to think about how your home is going to be connected, how your television is discussing with your oven as to whether or not the food is cooked, and you get in between messaging between the two. I mean, there are companies that still continue to unveil. There are also the ludicrous. I mean, there's lollipops that play music as you eat them. There's little toys. Everything that seems to be about AI and about companionship is something that just seems to involve some sort of cuddly toy that talks to you. But apparently cute is the way in which we're going to go forward. But there are the vacuum cleaners, there's the massage chairs. It still very much has this idea of pushing the innovation forward. And the main thing, guys, I cannot walk without seeing a humanoid robot of some sort. So we're going to have some big interviews a little bit later. We've got Boston Robotics, for example, coming on the show. And that's really Boston Dynamics, in fact, which has a huge new unveil of its latest humanoid.
All right, Caroline, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Caroline Hyde, she's somewhere out there, one of those huge convention halls out there in Vegas, and they are just massive, folks. You spend a whole day walking one end to the other. Caroline Hyde, B-Tech co-anchor, Bloomberg News. She's out there at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas. Let's get back to these markets here. Red and green on the screen here. The S&P pretty much unchanged. The Dow down 200 points, but the NASDAQ up 57 points. Where do we go here in 2026 after a really solid 2025 in both stocks and bonds and commodities? Anna Rothbun joins us. She's the CEO and founder at Grenadilla Advisory. Get her thoughts here. So, Anna, again, solid 2025 for those that were in the markets. What's your discussion points for 2026?
Hello, good morning. I just have one suggestion for those humanoid robot makers. Make the face really friendly, because I keep thinking of all those horror movies, but sci-fi movies and from the past. So one suggestion. But for 2026, I mean, we've seen it in the first 2 days and now maybe a third day. I think there's still room for AI to run. There is way too much excitement toward it. And frankly, we talk about a bubble, but we're still in the early stages of this. I mean, everything that we're hearing about is all either on the capacity, if we're talking about memory, or hardware and infrastructure. We haven't even gotten to the software side of it, right? And software is still early. I think that we're still in sort of the venture experimenting phase of it. So we've got a long runway. 2026 may see some volatility because the valuations are stretched. I don't think anyone is arguing against that. But if you're a longer term investor, you can sort of digest and manage that volatility. I think AI still has room to run.
It may still have room to run, but it won't run at the pace it had been in previous years. And so there's a lot of talk about how perhaps it's time to continue rotating, because we've actually seen this since late October, into cyclicals that may benefit from an improving economy. If you were to focus on cyclicals and put new money to work, what area feels like it's got the most prospects because it hasn't seen the big run up that the tech names have?
Yeah, I would look at the adjacent industries to tech because I think that tech is, even though we want to talk about cyclicals, I think they're kind of attached to them. And it's the 800-pound gorilla in the room, right? So things like utilities, energy, we've been talking about energy, we're talking about materials. I think those are actually excellent places to be in. I would be a little bit weary of anything that actually has margin, potentially have margin problems. I think companies that face, the B2C companies that face the consumers, they may be finding that, okay, they're out of inventory. What are we going to do with increasing prices? Maybe they may not be able to pass on those prices to consumers because we're talking about affordability. That is the word of the year. And so those companies may see their margins compressed. And the other thing is, I mean, look at manufacturing. The ISM numbers came out and durable goods came out this morning. I think there's going to be some pressure here. There are a lot of people who are disappointed because this was supposed to be the onshoring decade. And if we're bringing stuff back into the United States to be made, now we're hit with tariffs and increasing costs, increasing prices to the things that are going in to make our stuff. So I think that's going to be a mixed bag in 2026. So there are areas that are cyclical that we still have to watch very carefully.
Earnings, Anna, we've had some really good earnings in 2025. And we're looking, I'm just looking at S&P forecast for next year, kind of low teens growth forecast for next year. Is that enough for this market?
It may be enough for areas that are a bit subdued, right? So some of the more cyclical side, broadening out is the word, term that people use, right? It depends on where that, mid-teens, low teens earnings growth comes from. It may still come from tech in terms of contribution, in which case, the valuations are super high, but if earnings catch up, investors might actually be happy about it. We really need the earnings characteristics underneath that S&P 500 index to diversify. And that is the thing that we're hoping to see. I think a lot of people are expecting that, but we'll see. I still don't think we've seen the economy actually absorb the impact of the tariffs. I think last year we were just kind of swimming on the surface. I think this year we're actually going to start seeing some of those impacts.
Yeah, and it could happen as early as Friday if the Supreme Court does publish its ruling against President Trump's reciprocal tariffs. I also want to get your take on energy companies and the oil services companies in light of what we've seen in Venezuela over the past weekend. We certainly have seen emerging markets, Venezuelan bonds, and the bonds of the oil company there surge. But is it a good time right now to get into those oil companies in the U.S., or is it still too early because we're waiting for things to settle down?
I think it's still too early. I think what we've seen in the last few days is a reaction to the news, right? But if we've gotten used to anything from this administration, you get news every day. I mean, just today and last night, we've been getting news. So I think it's too early. And frankly, it doesn't take a day or two to dig oil, right? I mean, it takes a long time to build infrastructure. You can't go from under 1 million barrels to 3 million barrels. It just doesn't happen overnight. So I think this is a wait and see. And you also have to remember the social structure and the government in Venezuela is still unstable. Even though we say that there are all these agreements, I think it's wise to have a wait and see approach to see how this actually pans out from the negotiation perspective and frankly, from the government perspective in Venezuela.
Anna, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Anna Rothman. She is Chief Executive Officer at NVIDIA Advisory in Cleveland, Ohio. And looking at, you look at WTI crude oil, you look at Brent, they're off a little bit here today. I would have thought maybe geopolitical tensions, they kind of rise, but then you also make the argument
That's what I thought.
that they're going to crank out some production in Venezuela, which doesn't seem anytime soon, but that just goes to the oversupply concerns that are in the marketplace.
I mean, those are a lot of ifs, and bottom line right now is there's plenty of supply in the markets, and that's a reason why oil prices, whether it's WTI or Brent, have been hovering at around 5-year lows.
Yeah.
And people are saying at least for now, the story is still fairly bearish.
I think so. That's kind of what we understand when you think about the supply and demand, oversupply versus demand, it seems.
But every year, it's up and down. Oil is a very volatile market. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the new product that I have. This is called Super Strong Relief. If you have a muscle pain, or you have some arthritis, or a bruise, or a headache, rub this, apply this on the skin. It's topical, and you will have relief very quickly. All right. So please go to my store, take a look at this new product that I have. It's called Super Strong Relief, and it's for aches and pains, headaches, bruises. After a workout, let's say that you were in a sport and you overdid it and you have a lot of aches and pains from it. Apply this on the skin and you'll get instant relief. Please go to my store and get the Super Strong Relief. Very high quality, and it's a new product on my store. Good night formula. This is going to help you to get into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep, so you're consolidating memory, detoxifying your central nervous system, and you'll be well rested. This has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower to allow you to get into those cycles of REM sleep that are really important. And when you have good sleep regularly, you slow down the aging process. Vitamin D3, super important to take during the winter season, but you should be taking vitamin D3 year-round. Taking vitamin D3 will help for gene expression, because D3 is the gene expression cofactor. Vitamin D3 also helps to get rid of cells that are infected. It helps cells to go into apoptosis. Vitamin D3 helps to absorb calcium. And when you do resistance training, by absorbing calcium and doing resistance training, you're going to be able to deposit more bone. You'll have better bone density. In addition, taking vitamin D3 will help with your cardiovascular health. So please make sure you take vitamin D3 every day for just overall health. And lastly, the foundation of my anti-aging protocol, that foundation is the multivitamin. It's easy to digest. And these multivitamins will help with proper enzymatic activity, so your tissues will perform, your cells will perform better. So take this every day. It's easy to digest. And the probiotic. You can get the probiotic in veggie cap form or in powdered form. By taking a good probiotic, you're improving your gut biome, bringing down inflammation at the gut level, improving your immune system at the gut level, improving your skin. You're also improving your brain function. A lot of people don't realize that gut health also affects your metabolism and your brain function. By having a good gut biome, you're going to be able to sleep better. You're going to get rid of that brain fog. And again, by having good sleep, you're detoxifying your central nervous system and consolidating memory. So a lot of people don't realize that good health starts at the gut. So please go to my store and get the probiotics that I have to improve your gut biome, improve your metabolism, improve the ability to absorb your nutrients, and stack it with the multivitamin, which is easy to digest. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. All caps, discount 5. Now let's listen into CNN's spin of U.S. seizes Russian flagged oil tanker linked to Venezuela.
Development just moments ago. Sources just confirmed to CNN that the United States has seized an oil tanker that had been linked to Venezuela. Now, Russia is responding to the seizure, saying they are the owners of this vessel. The Trump administration has not acknowledged the Russian status, claiming the ship to be stateless, but nevertheless, you can see the sensitive nature of the situation. Russia had sent ships to track and maybe even protect this vessel over the last 24 hours. The United States has been tracking it across the Atlantic. It's the same ship that the Coast Guard had tried to seize last month near Venezuela. They were unable to board it, and the ship changed course and fled. But now, the breaking news, the United States has seized it. Nick Robertson, tracking the developments for us. Nick, what are you learning?
Yeah, over the last few days, John, U.S. Air Force has been flying P-8 surveillance aircraft tracking this ship as it came into the northern Atlantic. It's been heading sort of skirting wide of Ireland, heading up towards Iceland and that sort of gap to go towards the north of Russia, the Arctic Circle. Marine tracking experts believe a vessel of this size was likely headed towards Murmansk. That was the track that it was on, but that all came to a sudden screeching halt about 2.5 hours ago. Marine trackers noticing that the ship turned direction at that moment. And this really comports to the information we're getting now that the ship has been seized by U.S. military and Coast Guard. It has been tracked closely by them, as we say, since it fled the coast of Venezuela about 2 weeks ago. What makes this even more interesting, if you will, the ship, when it started its journey 2 weeks ago, was called the Bella One. Halfway along that route, it changed its name to the Marinera and reflagged itself as Russian. Not clear why. Were they trying to get protection from Russia? Was it always Russian? Unclear. The port that it appeared to be headed for in the past couple of days does appear to have been a Russian port. But now that ship has turned around, no longer heading north, for the last couple of hours heading south. Not clear where it will end up. It is believed to be empty or at least devoid of oil. We don't know what else or who else may be on board of it, but certainly enough for Russia to deploy military assets to try to give it some shadow of some kind of protection, and clearly not enough to deter the U.S. Coast Guard and the U.S. military assets that seized it a few hours ago, John.
All right, Nick Robertson tracking the situation for us. Let's go to the White House. Now, CNN's Elena Treen is there. Elena, bring us up to speed on what you're hearing and whether the White House is saying anything about conversations they may be having with Russia about this.
Yeah, look, I'm actually, so this has been a big thing that they have been, considering, John, regarding the seizure of the oil tanker. And it comes, of course, that they have really made moves to seize other tankers off the coast of Venezuela. The administration view largely on this is that they had already moved forward with this operation in trying to get what was previously known, as Nick laid out, as the Bella One oil tanker. And so this does add the fact that Russia has, tried to claim ownership of it, that they renamed the tanker, does add complications to it. But John, I do want to get to some of the new reporting I have as well and what we are learning about the Trump administration's conversations as it relates to Venezuela and what they need to do, the conditions they need to meet in order to resume oil production, which is, of course, one of the priorities for Venezuela and to continue with their economic stability. So sources have told me, White House officials, I should say, that the Trump administration has translated to Delcy Rodriguez, the now interim president of Venezuela, that in order to resume oil production and oil sales, they must sever economic ties with the United States foreign adversaries. That includes countries like China, Russia, Cuba, Iran, all countries that have really been propping up what was Maduro's regime for so many years. They also said that they want Venezuela and the interim government to partner exclusively with the United States on this. Now, of course, this comes as the president has been making clear that a key goal in this entire operation and the next steps for Venezuela is to try and have the U.S. have a higher stake in their oil. I'm also told, according to a senior White House official, John, that the president is meeting with different oil executives at the White House on Friday. That includes companies like Chevron, which I should note is the only U.S. oil company currently operating inside Venezuela, but also companies like ConocoPhillips and ExxonMobil. I'm told other American oil executives are expected to be at that meeting as well. This comes as the president has told others, he said this to Joe Scarborough on MS Now the other day, that essentially it's really all about the oil and that his priority is to make sure that the U.S. gets the oil. So this is going to be a huge topic of conversation, of course, as we look ahead, but also a key question. I think lawmakers in the House and Senate who are getting a full all members classified briefing from the Trump administration today will have for those officials inside the room.
All right, Elaine Train at the White House for us, and our thanks to Nick Robertson, who's tracking the situation with that now seized vessel. All right, Sarah.
All right, joining me now is Democratic Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy of Illinois, who is also running for Senate in that state. He sits on the House Intelligence Committee. Because we've just had this breaking news, this vessel has been seized. It now has a Russian flag on it. It is a Venezuelan oil tanker that reportedly does not have any oil in it, that is empty. What are your concerns here, and were you briefed on any of this?
No, not at all. I think that this is obviously going to come up in our classified briefing in a couple hours. We have the right, obviously, to enforce international sanctions. However, nobody wants conflict or a war, and we don't want a situation of open hostilities with the Russians.
I also want to bring in CNN military analyst and retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Cedric Layton. We also have CNN Global Affairs analyst Kim Dozier. Great to have you both. Cedric, I want to start off with you. Just a few minutes ago, we heard the news that the United States has now seized Bella 1, the oil tanker that's now under a Russian flag. It was in December under a flag of Guyana. The U.S. wasn't able to seize it about a month ago and now successful. Take me through what you're reading into the operations out at sea.
Yeah, well, Elaine, this is a very sophisticated operation that took place here. It involved a lot of assets from both the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Coast Guard, as well as possibly some other assets, including special operations assets. So there was a movement of U.S. forces to Great Britain in the days just prior to the seizure today of the tanker Bella 1 / Marinera. And that is, a critical indicator that this ship had been followed by the U.S. and they had, for whatever reason, wanted to really focus on this tanker. So on the one hand, it's an oil tanker, but there may be some other things associated with this, because if the Reuters reports are correct that Claire mentioned, then there might be something else associated with this tanker, because the Russians moved assets, including possibly a submarine, to try to protect this. So from a purely military standpoint, when you look at how this was undertaken, it was a very sophisticated operation, and they did it in spite of Russian attempts to protect it. And those Russian attempts were apparently, based on these reports that we're getting, unsuccessful.
All right, Kim Dozier also with us. Kim, what are you reading into this? I mean, President Trump making good on his word, frankly, and wanting Venezuelan oil. This is a tanker that they tried to seize and were unsuccessful. And of course, the question of Russia comes into play here as he tries to negotiate with them on the issue of Ukraine. Is this going to infuriate the Russians and all sides involved?
It may well do, but it seems that Trump is emboldened by the seizure of Maduro and riding high on the success of that, and the lack of the world's sort of pushback. There have been some statements against it, but it has made Trump realize anew that when you're the superpower, there's nobody who can push back in the short term to stop you. And as Cedric was saying, there was a lot of Russian attention being paid to this ship, a lot of resources and assets protecting it, which makes you wonder, what the heck are they carrying? And now the U.S. is going to be able to find out. It also comes at the same time that both Russia and China are upset over the attack on one of their allies, Venezuela, that they rely on for oil. So it is a way of Trump sending a signal to those other would-be superpowers that he has a way of, seizing the jewels and making them sit up and take notice. But there will be some sort of payback down the line, and I don't think the White House is really calculating that yet.
Very interesting. Makes you wonder if they were moving weapons on that tanker, or maybe even personnel, because according to the advisor to President Obama, a book that I read, I think his name's Michael McPaul, I think it is, that I just finished. It's about autocrats and Democrats. That's the title. But he was mentioning that Wagner Group from Russia was in Venezuela, propping up Maduro's regime. So Russia's involved in Venezuela, and we don't hear much of that in the news. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nanosilver toothpaste. Get a few tubes of this for your household. It's a very high quality toothpaste. It's made from structural nanosilver. It's going to help to neutralize. And it'll also improve your oral cavity, reduce plaque formation, and with good oral hygiene, you are also improving your cardiovascular system. A lot of people don't realize that when you get older and you have bad oral hygiene, you start getting microscopic plaques into your bloodstream because of bleeding gums, and that could cause an occlusion at the vascular level. Also, with good oral hygiene, you're reducing valvular disease. So it's really important to have good oral hygiene. Please go to my store, get this toothpaste. It's made from structural nanosilver. It's the best toothpaste that you're going to be able to get. Very high quality. Get a few tubes of this for your household. Also, help boost up your immune system by getting the vitamin C and magnesium and the magnesium and zinc. Magnesium is super important for brain function. The magnesium and zinc will help to boost up the immune system. It's really important to take during the winter season, but should be taking it year-round. If you're not feeling well because of some sort of cold or whatever, take a double dose. Take one in the morning, take one in the evening. Vitamin C and magnesium, you should be taking it every day. This will help with your skin, your brain function, and your immune system. Take them together, drink it with filtered water, preferably every day, but especially during the winter season. And lastly, I have dual purpose deodorants for males or for females. You can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or in citrus. These are very high quality deodorants. They will help to detoxify your body. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas. And when you're detoxifying your body regularly, you're helping your immune system and your endocrine system. So it's dual purpose. Use it as a daily deodorant, and you also get an added benefit of detoxifying your body. Please go to my store, get a couple bars for your household, and help support your health and wellness. Make sure you use discount 5, all caps, discount 5. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Next video is dozens reportedly killed in Iran protests.
Nicolas Maduro, President Trump has been warning a long list of countries, including Iran. Nationwide protests there against a cost of living crisis are ramping up. And President Trump has warned that Iran will get hit hard by the US if protesters are killed. CNN's Paula Hancock has the latest.
A female protester is dragged from a street in Tehran. Demonstrators run for cover as gunfire is heard in Malek Shahi, a city in Iran's western Ilam province. It is a familiar and brutal response to nationwide protests, now in their second week. The Iranian currency is collapsing, inflation rising, and the cost of living becoming hard to bear. Shopkeepers, traders, and students on the streets blame government mismanagement. Officials say publicly they are willing to talk.
The government is trying to be more amenable to dialogue. President Pezeshkian has offered to mediate and engage. He's acknowledged responsibility.
But as the president offers dialogue, the security forces are cracking down, attacking protesters holed up in this hospital in Ilam. Social media footage shows forces inside looking for injured protesters and those trying to hide. The US State Department said, quote, "The assault on the injured with tear gas and live ammunition is a blatant crime against humanity." The US president has already threatened to step in if protesters are killed.
We're watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get ready to experience.
A move against the Iranian regime that Israel's prime minister has been encouraging.
اقداماتی یا
Actions or statements raised by figures such as the Prime Minister of the Zionist regime or some radical American officials regarding Iran's internal affairs amount, under international norms, to nothing more than incitement to violence, incitement to terrorism, and incitement to killing.
US military attacks on Venezuela over the weekend and the capture of President Nicolas Maduro will be watched closely in Tehran.
I think Venezuela adds icing to a really clearly baked cake for Iran. The Islamic Republic has learned the hard way that President Trump is unpredictable.
Although the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, does still have some support, there are increasing calls for his removal, both inside and outside the country. Paula Hancock, CNN, Abu Dhabi.
We're closely watching yet another country that Trump is now threatening, Iran. There's video here on the screen of anti-government protests today. What you're looking at are the protests themselves. There were gas canisters thrown. Protesters were clashing with security forces. Trump threatening that the U.S., in his words, is locked and loaded if Iran kills protesters. Rights groups saying at least 29 people have been killed since protests began last week over economic fears. Up front now, retired four-star General Joseph Votel, commander of U.S. Central Command during Trump's first term. And General, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to speak with you again. President Trump has warned Iran, and I'll read the full quote, "We are locked and loaded and ready to go if Iran kills protesters." Now, as of tonight, General, human rights groups say that 29 protesters are dead. So what do you think happens here?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. It's great to be with you again. Well, I think the president certainly is using the informational element of national power here to send a message to the Iranian people and to the Iranian regime. I think that is what he is definitely focused on. He's trying to send a message of support to the protesters and a message of warning to the regime. There are a wide variety of options that the United States could consider here. I don't know what the specific threshold is that the administration has in mind for deaths on the ground, but again, there are a variety of different options, everything from deploying to, reestablish posture and deterrence, to actually conducting strikes, to providing support for opposition elements, to sharing intelligence with some of our partners, or conducting maybe cyber or covert operations to make things more difficult for the regime. So there's lots of options that the president has, and I think right now we're using the informational element of power here to put a lot of pressure on the regime.
And I know, General, you're laying out a lot of options that make a lot of sense. Of course, we're in a world that's very shaken now by what just happened to Maduro. And obviously during the operation last summer, when Israel had said they could take out the supreme leader, they didn't, but then, he was hiding in the bunker, right? You got to now put on the table of, has the whole game changed? Has the red lines moved? Could something happen here of taking out the supreme leader or taking out the president of Iran? I mean, do you think such a thing is on the table for the president?
Absolutely, it should be.
No, I don't know. I don't know what all of the options are, but certainly I think going after key leaders would probably be something that at least would be discussed in a wide variety of military options. I think the one thing that I think is important for people to appreciate is that while we've just seen a stunning military operation down in Caracas by our Special Operations Forces, expertly executed with a high degree of precision and success, every situation really presents its own challenges. So trying to do what was done in Caracas, there's an element of, an aggravated element of difficulty trying to do something like that in Tehran. So, you have to look at the situation on the ground here and try to match the military options to the situation and the effects that we're trying to create.
General Votel, I'm grateful for your time, and thank you so much for your perspective, sir.
I'm David Lichtenstein. I founded Lightstone in 1986. And
that oil tanker, the US has intercepted and we hear boarded this oil tanker in the North Atlantic following a previous failed bid to capture the vessel as it headed to Venezuela. One correspondent has described it as a confrontation of Cold War proportions. Is it? Could it be?
I don't think so, although it could well have implications for Russia and our dealings over the Ukraine. But let's start with the notion that it's a Russian flag vessel. What it really is what is called in international parlance a stateless vessel. In its captain's office, it's probably got the flags of a dozen countries. It probably has enough paint to color over the paint on its obviously rusty hull, whatever colors it wants to paint on it. And a stateless vessel in international law is treated differently than a vessel legitimately flagged by a responsible country. So in fact, there's nothing there. If the Kremlin wants to make something of it, they could, and it's in part an example of the incoherence of Trump's approach to policy. This boarding is a Venezuela-related matter. Has the Oval Office taken due consideration of the potential ramifications with respect to Russia and Ukraine? I doubt it. But now we'll find out.
So it's interesting, your description of it there as a stateless vessel. It's almost like a car with a dodgy number plate, essentially, on the high
Right.
seas.
It's some people call these the ghost fleets, the ghost ships. They're transiting with sanctioned Russian oil, sanctioned Venezuelan oil, sanctioned Iranian oil, and they turn off their transponders from time to time so people can't locate them. It really is a fundamentally illicit business, and if we could close down the ghost ships, countries like Russia, Venezuela, and Iran that have been sanctioned would have a lot more difficult time functioning and getting the revenues they get from their illicit oil shipments.
Can you understand from a UK perspective, as we hear what we're hearing from the Trump administration about their plans for Greenland, which we can discuss in more detail in a second, that the UK, looking at this operation around the oil tanker, might think, well, hang on, why are we assisting America in this when they are declaring they're about to take over a part of Europe and maybe destroy NATO in the process?
Well, because it's a legitimate seizure of a sanctioned vessel, helping a regime in Venezuela that itself has stolen the past two presidential elections, 2018 and 2024, and repressed its own citizens, not to mention inviting the Russians, Cubans, Chinese, and Iranians into a much larger role in the Western Hemisphere. To turn to Greenland, look, I think Trump's comments about the potential use of military force are very harmful to the United States. He is taking something that's easy and making it hard. I would be personally delighted if the 60,000 residents of Greenland in a referendum voted to become a Commonwealth of the United States. I think that was terrific. I'm sorry Secretary of State William Seward failed to purchase it from Denmark in 1868 when we first tried. I'm sorry that Harry Truman, who offered $100 million in 1947, wasn't successful. But we are where we are now, and the fact is that while U.S. sovereignty would be fine, certainly fine with me, the real issue here is U.S. security. And not just U.S. security, the security of Canada, the security of Denmark, the security of the entire NATO alliance from Russian and Chinese efforts in the Arctic Ocean to undermine our security.
Is Greenland remaining Greenland, as it is now, an obstacle to that maintenance of security? They say it isn't.
And they're correct. I did a lot of research on this back in 2019 when Trump first raised this. And in fact, I almost had a meeting with Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen back then, if the whole thing hadn't blown up in the press, when Trump called the Prime Minister a nasty woman for saying that she wasn't going to sell Greenland. And anyway, that's history. But the fact is, history shows that the U.S. and other NATO allies can easily work with Denmark and Greenland to do whatever we need to do to secure ourselves. And the history is that in World War II, after the Nazis had overrun Denmark, the Danish government in exile worked with the United States, obviously to assist in the liberation of Europe. And by the end of World War II, there were 16 American military bases in Denmark, 16. When Truman failed to buy Greenland in 1951, the U.S. and Denmark signed a bilateral agreement called the Defense of Greenland Treaty, which we reviewed, as I said, some years ago, and it would permit us to do anything Trump has said so far he would like to do. That's why he's taking something that's easy and making it hard.
And, for all his claiming that it is about security, and he rejects any notion that he's doing it just for minerals or oil and gas reserves or for real estate, isn't the truth that his ambitions to take Greenland, to use the language that they're using, inadvertently, or maybe not inadvertently, serves the interests of Putin and materially threatens the continuing existence of NATO?
Sure, it's because Trump has a small mind. Land, let's get the land. Let's put a Trump casino there. Obviously,
you think that's part of it? That's part of it.
Sure, I'm sure it is. But the larger strategic interest can be accommodated through the Defense of Greenland Treaty and through cooperation among allies. And I think the potential damage to NATO is very real. I agree that if number one, if Trump used military force, there'd be an earthquake in the United States of unbelievable proportions if he were to try and do that.
What would that look like? What would that look like? Because the Democrats have been very quiet since he's become
president. Well, everybody's been very quiet, but
yeah.
There would be an eruption. And Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, was on Capitol Hill yesterday saying Trump's not going to invade. This is just intended to put pressure on Denmark because Trump wants to buy it. Now, in terms of Trump management, which is no small problem for people who work for him, Rubio may have made a big mistake there by revealing the truth, perhaps accidentally, about what's going on about Trump's bargaining. But the fact is, when you treat allies this way, it's only a matter of time until they decide they don't want to be allies. Most normal people understand that.
Although America, from the European perspective, is a very particular kind of ally, isn't it? Extremely strong, extremely powerful militarily. And on a number of fronts, we're not ready to stand tall yet on that front, are we?
Well, it depends on how tall you want to stand. I mean, I've certainly pressed NATO for years to do more, for European members to do more on their defense expenditures. And I think people in Europe need to be very careful here about how they treat this and how they treat Trump, because if they go on and on about how they want to be independent, stand on their own, that leaves the way for Trump to say, fine, we don't want to put pressure on anybody. If they don't like it, we'll just withdraw from NATO. This is a question, as I say, of Trump management, and it's unpleasant and difficult to deal with, but handling it wrong can have significant consequences.
Has he and Putin are very different men in so many ways, personality-wise, strategy-wise. It's not clear that Trump has a strategic mind at all, is it? But is there a touch of Putin's expansionist playbook in the Greenland question?
Yeah, look, Trump doesn't think conceptually. He doesn't have a philosophy. He doesn't do national security grand strategy. He doesn't even really do policy the way people understand it. When he's called transactional, that's what it means. Let's make a deal and get Venezuela's oil. Let's make a deal and get Greenland. Let's make a deal and do this. He admires strong men, people like Xi Jinping, Putin, Kim Jong-un, but this is not part of some coherent plan.
You'll know that yesterday the UK and France agreed that in the event of a peace deal in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, they would deploy troops to Ukraine alongside US support. I was surprised, actually, to hear how bluntly our own Prime Minister, in Prime Minister's questions, just said, in response to a question about that commitment to Ukraine, it's essentially a moot point if NATO collapses. If he didn't use the exact language I'm using, but he was essentially saying, unless we have America alongside us, that's not going to happen. That's deeply serious, isn't it, for global security?
Well, I've been saying for quite some time now that Trump is still fully capable of withdrawing from NATO. And, sometimes he looks favorable to Ukraine and everybody says, oh, the problem's solved, everything's done. He doesn't fundamentally understand collective defense alliances, bilateral or multilateral. And it won't take much to push him over the edge if he's not handled carefully. Is that fair? Does Europe have to put up with that? Look, I wish we didn't have to put up with it in the United States, but that's the reality we face. And to preserve what we can of NATO, to minimize the destructiveness of the remainder of the Trump administration and facilitate repair once it's over, that we just have to keep that in mind.
Can we still rely on the US as a sensible ally? Or do you think that people like Keir Starmer and other European leaders are having to say one thing in public, but understand in private the very thing you've just described?
Well, heaven forbid that any government leader would ever do anything like that. I mean, it's just a question of getting through the next 3 years. I mean, I know that sounds like a long period of time, but once we get through it, it's very likely the U.S. will elect a normal person as president, and maybe we can get back to doing what's in our national security interest instead of what happens to cross Trump's short attention span at any given time.
John Bolton can never say anything positive about Trump. You notice that? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. This will help reduce the stress on your pancreas, allow you to digest proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids, reduce the load on your digestive system, and allow you to absorb your nutrients. So please go to my store, get the digestive enzyme complex. This will also help people that are athletes. When you take let's say a pre-workout or post-workout fueling, this will help you to digest it and reduce the load on your pancreas. No matter how healthy you are, your pancreas doesn't function as well as when it was younger. All right, so it's really important for pancreatic health to take the digestive enzyme complex. You don't want to be a Steve Jobs, okay? Olive leaf extract. Olive leaf extract is dual purpose. It's going to help with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. How does that work, Dr. Paul Cottrell? Easy. It brings down inflammation, and it helps to control your lipid profile. By controlling your lipid profile, by bringing down LDL and increasing your HDL levels, you're reducing plaque formation. When you reduce inflammation at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. And when you reduce inflammation systemically, you're boosting up your immune system. A lot of people don't realize if you're chronically inflamed, guess what? Your immune system is actually suppressed. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the olive leaf extract. Get healthy. And we're still in the winter season, and we're going to be going into the allergy season. It is really important that you get the structural nano silver drops that I have. You can get it in blueberry, in cherry flavor, and also honey and lemon. Very high quality. Get a few bags for your household. And once you have that throat irritation, take them right away. If someone around you doesn't seem like they're doing too well, maybe have a cold or something, you might want to take these prophylactically. Get a few of these for your household and for work. Take them right away. Mitigate the problem. It's made from structural nano silver. All right. What's going on? It's dozens in Iran reportedly killed, more than 1,200 detained.
Protests in Iran are intensifying as the country's president says the crisis may be moving beyond the control of officials. Trey Ying says, following all of these details very carefully, are things ratcheting up there, Trey?
Yeah, Dana, good morning. Protests continue to erupt across Iran over the country's weak currency and poor living conditions. Human rights organizations say at least 36 people have been killed by Iranian security forces since these demonstrations began late last month. The same groups say more than 1,200 have been detained. Late Tuesday demonstrations unfolded as demonstrators clashed with police who fired tear gas inside Tehran's Grand Bazaar, a landmark in the Iranian capital. Similar protests have reportedly unfolded in more than 88 cities as Iran's army commander-in-chief blamed the U.S. and Israel for the deteriorating situation.
Today, there are no doubts about the hostility of the U.S. president and the criminal prime minister of Israel towards the Iranian nation. They allow themselves to meddle in this internal affair of ours. They tweet, they talk, they have been enemies throughout history, and 6 or 7 months ago, they killed and martyred over 1,000 Iranians, including commanders, soldiers, scientists, children, daughters, sons, women, and men.
The commander referencing the June 2025 strikes that were launched by Israel and the United States amid the 12-day war when President Trump ordered the destruction of Iranian nuclear sites. 6 months later, there are growing questions about the possibility of another direct conflict with Iran, as the president has warned Iranian leadership against killing demonstrators. Overnight, the son of Iran's exiled Shah was on Fox News, saying this to Sean Hannity.
We've seen unprecedented scenes in the Iranian bazaar of merchants and joining with the protesters, and it has been my strategy to call upon the military personnel and people, the armed forces, to lay down their arms and join with the people to be part of the solution.
Here in Israel, the army remains on high alert, preparing for the possibility of another war with Iran. Bill,
so Trey, what would keep you here? There's a big piece from the Associated Press today talking about the events of Venezuela this past weekend are on the minds of many there in Iran. I don't know what you picked up on that. Khamenei is believed to have gone into hiding for his own protection. Can we advance that story at the moment or not?
Absolutely. Look, the Iranians are looking at what the United States says and what the United States does. President Trump was very clear that if Nicolas Maduro continued to try and get drugs into the United States, that the United States would take action against him and his regime. And we saw late last week that's exactly what happened. You have to imagine Iranian leadership in Tehran is looking at those actions in South America and wondering if the United States could take further action against their regime. President Trump has been very clear over the past week, putting out multiple posts on Truth Social and speaking in a variety of press engagements, that if the Iranian regime kills demonstrators, as they are continuing to do, that the United States could take military action. And so right now the regime has to decide whether or not the president is bluffing. And if recent history shows anything, ultimately he does what he says he's going to do. And so the regime remains on high alert, according to reports out of Tehran. We saw just over the past 48 hours, Iranian air defense conducting a variety of drills, preparing for the possibility of American or Israeli strikes. Bill, Dana?
All right, Trey Yates, thank you so much.
Great stuff. Thank you, Trey.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
All right, so the S&P 500 is trading at 6,952. VIX is at 14.95, so VIX is steady. And as long as the VIX stays low, we're going to see us drifting upward in terms of the S&P 500. Euro is trading at 1.16, so it's a little bit stronger for the dollar compared to yesterday. Oil's trading at $56 a barrel and 39 cents. Bitcoin is trading at 91,755. And the Japanese yen is trading at 156.75. When the Japanese central bank, the BOJ, starts to raise rates, we should see that number continue to go down. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing maybe 150 as the BOJ starts to raise rates. Now, natural gas is trading at 3.5. And looks like treasuries for the 10-year yields are going up, so the bond price is going down. Let's see, it's probably trading at 4.1 something. So the 10-year is trading at 10-year is trading at 4.144 at the moment. Okay, now Bitcoin, there is a major resistance level at 95. Right, it's around 61% retracement line. If you've been paying attention to my analysis, go to maybe 2 or 3 videos ago, and I go over an analysis of the market. 95 is a major resistance level. Now, some money managers have moved a decent amount of cash into Bitcoin. So they bought Bitcoin. And you start seeing yesterday how Bitcoin was moving upward and then tested the 61% retracement and then bounced back down. All right. So 95 is a major resistance level. Now I keep on saying that, I don't think I don't think Bitcoin is a very liquid market in the sense of there's a lot of traders, a lot of retail traders and institutionals buying into it. And I think that there's a psychological barrier that once something gets to 100,000, that you're not going to find as many buyers. Now, yes, you can buy fractions of a share, fractions of a Bitcoin. But the thing is that I think a lot of people are going to start moving away from it. Now, there's a little bit of a mean reversion or a slight recovery of Strategy stock, who's heavily invested in Bitcoin, but they've lost a lot of value in the last year, in the last 12 months. So Bitcoin still is manipulated by whales. They come in, buy a lot, and then the price goes up, and then once they stop buying, the price goes back down. So this is the reason why I keep on saying I'm not so sure that there's really a really strong liquid market for everyday trading. Because if it was really a strong liquid market, then you wouldn't have the volatility. The volatility is due to, it's a sign that it's not that liquid. That's the reason why it goes up and goes down pretty quickly. And it's a lot. And so it's not, I don't think it's very safe for a retail investor. No. Could you make some money in it? Yes, you can, but you could lose too. And there's the ETF wrappers I don't think work very well. So I'd stay away from Bitcoin. I think you can make money doing other things, and you'd be just as well off and probably have less risk and less worry. All right, with that said, let's take a look at some other news that's starting to happen here. Okay, CNBC is talking to former St. Louis Fed President Bullard. So we're going to listen in here. He might end up being the federal chair.
My name is Ross. I've been at Success Academy for 10 years. Success showed me what was possible for my future. There's always college.
Joining us now, former St. Louis Fed President James Bullard. He is now Dean of Purdue University's Mitch Daniels School of Business. Now I can call you. I introduce you as James and then call you Jim. Yeah, welcome. It's good to have you on. I'll just put this out there. So the Dow's almost at 50,000. The labor market might be showing signs of weakening a little, but for every bad number we get some numbers that say no, it's not that bad, and it's 4.6%. Inflation may be stubborn, but it looks kind of like it might be anchored. It could eventually come down. Is this the greatest Federal Reserve in history in terms of managing things that you were part of?
I think the committee's in pretty good shape right now. They've got, on the labor side, I would just stress, Joe, that you've got to take the immigration policy into effect. Some of the estimates that I've seen around the Fed and elsewhere suggest that the run rate with the new immigration policy that the U.S. has starting last year, the new run rate for non-farm payrolls would only be 30 to 50,000 or something like that. So when you get a number like 70,000 or, you're actually above the run rate. I don't think that the market has completely brought that online in their thinking. We're used to thinking 150,000 jobs or something like that. So I think that's been tough. And we didn't have this immigration policy before, so it's all different. So I think that's why the labor market actually, on other indicators, seems fine. You've got unemployment insurance claims, for instance, very, very stable and very low. So there doesn't seem to be any problem on that side. And even the 4.6% unemployment rate, that's close to what most people would say is the neutral rate, or the natural rate of unemployment, mid 4% range. So pretty good outcomes there. And then inflation's hanging up a little bit high, and so the committee wants to stay up a little bit above neutral, the neutral policy rate, to try to continue to push inflation down. And if inflation does continue to come down during 2026 here, then they'll have a little room to maneuver a little bit farther. Not a lot farther, I think. But right now, I think they're in a good place, and they're probably reluctant to move too much from here without seeing more data.
And some of it might be related on both sides of the dual mandate. Some of the the reason that companies may not be hiring as much, but aren't really laying people off as much, that could be AI related. And then, obviously productivity and inflation. You remember what happened to inflation the first time around with the internet? I mean, how long did that tamp down in inflation? Just the long-term effects of the new world.
There's a famous episode in U.S. monetary policy, and Alan Greenspan called it. He said, I think we've got a productivity boom going on, and we could be on the cusp of that once more here. And I think the late 90s is a good benchmark. It's that we're not exactly like that, but it's a good benchmark to think about and to look at. And when you think about how the internet, sort of permeated through the whole economy, it did drive productivity, even though you couldn't really point to, particular examples where all of a sudden it did something, that's really noticeable. But it permeates the whole economy, and that's where the productivity gains come from. And the productivity numbers have been good for the last 2 years, and look like they'll probably be good for this year too. So that's pretty good news for the U.S. economy.
And people that want to criticize the current economy say, have you ever seen the unemployment rate rise a half a point and not indicate either a recession or a slowdown? And I hate to say it's different this time, but this way you said 4.6 is not far in this in this economy. That's probably not far from full employment. But
I think the way to think about this, it's great to look at macroeconomic history and try to infer things, but this time was a little bit different. You had this gigantic pandemic, and then you had the very rapid recovery from that pandemic, and that drove the unemployment rate way down into the 3% range. It's the 3% numbers that are kind of abnormal for the U.S. economy. And then that kind of all settled down, and now you're in the 4% range, and that maybe is closer to the natural rate.
I mean, Jay Powell, suffers the slings and arrows of the president, but deep down, I think, a lot of the things.
For me,
turn your dreams into reality.
Wow.
With financial guidance from New York Life, more powerful together.
A lot of the things the president says are bluster. He's always going to want lower interest rates. He's always going to, want it his way. But things are in the stock market, job market, inflation. Things are pretty good. I think deep down he knows that, President Trump.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed message. I think that this pro-business administration done a lot of good things, and we're looking pretty good for growth. They don't really need the lower interest rates, and they don't need to take the risk that inflation would reignite here. That would be very troublesome for the economy, for markets, and politically, I think. So that's what you want to be guarding against here, and let the economy run, because it's running pretty well.
What does that indicate to you on who the president picks? That he doesn't need to pick a rubber stamp, and I'm not going to name names, but he could pick someone that is really good at this and would raise rates when you have to, and not raise them and not cut them when you shouldn't. Who do you think he's going to pick when it's all done? You think he'll make the right choice?
I think he's got a good set of candidates in front of him, so there's not really a wrong answer, I think, from the president's point of view. All of these people have skills that they can bring to the table and would do, I think, a good job. I don't think that you really need to have this story about driving nominal interest rates, really, really low. I think if you get to a really low nominal interest rate or zero interest rates or something, that probably is not a good day for the U.S. economy. It probably means that something has gone badly wrong, and that's why you're at this super low rate. So I think I don't think the White House probably doesn't need to press so hard on that issue, and you really want competent management, and you want reform at the Fed, which is something that Secretary Bessent has emphasized.
This year and next, bell curve for GDP? What's it right in the center? You think what 4% will be on the right side of the bell curve? Would 2% be on the left side, or is 3 in the middle, or is it 1 and then 3 and 2 in the middle? Where are we? Have we moved by?
I'd put down a 3 for this year, 3% growth. Acknowledging that there are risks out there, but I think there is some upside even to that.
Even if
we're going to get faster growth this year, so I think it will be a good year for the U.S. economy.
That'd be amazing. That'd help with the debt. That'd help with that 40 trillion. It's going to be 40 trillion, like next month or something, or like in 4 months.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that happened in the second half of the 90s, you did get rapid growth, rapid productivity growth, and that did help a lot. I mean, I don't want to take Congress off the hook. They do have to.
Right, don't say that.
All right. So we're going to go to MS Now. And they're saying this is insanity. Joe slams White House for threatening to invade Greenland.
The White House says President Trump is discussing a range of options to obtain that island. In a statement yesterday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt wrote in part, President Trump has made it well known that acquiring Greenland is a national security priority of the United States. Utilizing the U.S. military is always an option at the Commander-in-Chief's disposal. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, meanwhile, told lawmakers on Monday that recent threats toward Greenland do not signal an imminent invasion. That's according to new reporting from the Wall Street Journal. Rubio's comments came during a closed-door briefing with the Secretary of State explaining that the Trump administration's goal is to buy the island from Denmark. The paper reports that Rubio's remarks were in response to Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer asking if the administration was planning to use military force in other places, including Mexico and Greenland. Rubio played down the idea that the United States could seize Greenland by force, according to people familiar with the briefing. The journal also notes that U.S. and European officials say they have seen no signs of the White House preparing a military invasion of Greenland. Meanwhile, European leaders yesterday showed support for Greenland, releasing a joint statement saying the island belongs to its people and stressing that security in the Arctic must be achieved collectively with NATO allies, including the United States. It comes after Denmark's prime minister on Monday warned that an American takeover of Greenland would amount to the end of NATO.
The Wall Street Journal's editorial board is writing about this morning in a piece titled Invade Greenland? Why? The piece writes, the invasion talk is probably Trumpian bluster to prod a negotiation to buy the island or end up with some other expanded U.S. presence. But even the suggestion of force is damaging America's interest across the Atlantic. Danish Prime Minister Frederiksen was candid that, quote, if the United States chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything will come to an end, including NATO. The truth of that statement is what makes military action from Mr. Trump hard to take seriously. But feuding with friends over Greenland is giving Vladimir Putin another wedge to divide America from Europe to his benefit. That means less U.S. leverage for driving a good and durable Ukraine settlement. Maybe the Greenland affair is merely what now passes for online MAGA entertainment. But Mr. Trump would help his own cause in every hemisphere if he dropped the invade Greenland routine. That's the Wall Street Journal's editorial board. Joe, as many people pointed out, if you want a bigger base, we already have one on Greenland. Right. Denmark says, go for it. You want another base on Greenland? Right. Go for it, says Denmark. It's unnecessary to threaten them with military force rather than to talk to them, to negotiate with them, or even to attempt to buy the island.
No, it's insanity. And the fact is that they are good NATO partners of ours. So you can't even claim that it's damaging to America's national security interests because, well, they're our NATO ally. So it is, and the White House yesterday, John, saying that invading Greenland has always been an option. No, it's not an option unless you are absolutely insane, unless you want to turn your back on what the United States of America has been doing since 1945, which has created. Let me say this again for idiots out there that say, oh, well, America's been suckers. No.
everything we've set up. The world order that we set up starting in 1947 led to the American century, led to American dominance, led to America's military by and far being the strongest military in the history of mankind, led us to be the most powerful country when it comes to soft power, led us to become the most powerful economic machine in history, in world history. These billionaires running around saying stupid shit like this, these are the same billionaires that are billionaires because of the world order that we created in this country post-1945. That world order begins to crumble piece by piece by piece.
It's not just the world order, it's the whole rebuilding of Europe and how the United States benefited from it. How our manufacturing base was not harmed by World War II. The boom of births after the war. All these were really important features to the hegemonic power that led to the United States being dominant. Now, this new world order that he's talking about, or this, this civilized post-World War II order, we had to work together to fight the Russians, fight the Soviet Union during the Cold War. So there was a component of it was the nuclear deterrence and the MAD strategy. So it's a little bit more complicated than just, having a world order that is, having this multilateral, and that we're all gonna make peace in the UN, and the UN is gonna be so powerful and so effective. But fast forward from 1946 to now, 2026, the UN is dysfunctional. And having an open market and having bilateral negotiations just led to the rise of China. That's going to lead to World War III. So this peace and prosperity that he's saying because of the world order has led us to this point where there's probably going to be tactical nukes used in the Asian theater when China tries to take Taiwan. And if the United States loses, our way of life is gone. But if the United States wins, there's going to be so much debt that was created to make sure we win the war that we probably will have financial problems. And that's what this world order that he's talking about led us to. If this world order that Morning Joe is saying was so great, then why are we at the place that we're at today? It has nothing to do with Trump. This problem with Taiwan has nothing to do with Trump. It has a lot to do with Carter, it has a lot to do with Kissinger and Nixon.
When you start undermining the NATO alliance by talking about invading a NATO ally, let me just say again, because I understand that there are a lot of people.
Trump is just poking. He's just, trolling. He's not going to invade a NATO nation. Get real. He's not going to do that. But the thing is that the social programs that the European countries have were subsidized by American taxpayers because the American taxpayers helped rebuild their country after World War and also helped fund NATO to make sure that we were on the winning side after the Cold War. And they didn't spend their part in supporting NATO. The United States did. We subsidized. And all these countries, they didn't pay their fair share. They increased their social programs for their country with healthcare and with education. They allowed more of a social net, but it was American taxpayers that subsidized it. Money is fungible. We paid into NATO, supported the NATO and the NATO alliance, while other countries were riding our coattails, riding on the backs of American taxpayers. And so when they're told that they need to pay their fair share, now they're having a debt problem. Oh, they got to tell their population, we can't give you as many social programs because we're supposed to now pay into NATO the way they should have been doing for decades. So, morning, Joe. How did this world order really pan out? How did the world order that you love so much because you're a lawyer and pushing paper, didn't design anything, didn't make anything, can't fix anything? That world order you're talking about hemorrhaged manufacturing jobs for the last 35 years and reduced our economic and military prowess, especially with the naval yards. So, morning, Joe. Why do you think that the new world order, this world order that you're talking about post-World War II, was so great? There were people that were taking advantage of the situation, and unfortunately it was hardworking Americans that paid the price. Not some dipshit on MS Now that's a lawyer. I still want to know what happened to his staffer. No one really knows. She just kind of died.
Things like this, that it's a military option, that I don't know. Maybe they're playing with coloring books before they say things like this. Let me explain again. The United States GDP is around 25, 26, 27 trillion dollars. Europe's, the EU's GDP is around 23, 24, 25 trillion dollars. Russia's is like 1.4 trillion. It's how powerful we are when we stand. It's how powerful we are when we stand shoulder to shoulder next to our allies that help us.
Oh, we did that for decades. We did that during the Marshall Plan. We did that during the Cold War. We did that with, quote, the peace dividend that never really came after the Cold War. And they took advantage of American taxpaying dollars and boosted up their social programs. They were not productive, and now they have debt, a debt cliff, a doom loop. The UK is almost bankrupt. France is almost bankrupt. Germany, almost bankrupt. Really, Joe? Really? Oh, you're a lawyer. You're stupid.
Defeat Nazism, that help us defeat communism, that will help us together overcome the threat from China. And we're talking about Venezuela when China is eating our lunch across the globe. We're talking about Greenland when China is eating our lunch across the globe. We're talking about all of these 19th century pursuits.
We need Greenland for the Golden Dome, dumbass. We need Greenland for its raw materials. We need Greenland because we need to control the Arctic. China wants to control the Arctic. Russia wants to control the Arctic. Greenland would be a perfect waypoint for the United States for missile defense and also to be able to control the Arctic Circle. Having Greenland is actually a play against China. But he's a lawyer, so he doesn't know much.
When China is rushing headfirst into the 21st century race, militarily, economically, diplomatically, and most importantly, Jim Van Dyke would certainly.
And there was a bunch of lawyers and bankers that thought that hemorrhaging jobs in the United States was going to be good for the paper pushers, the paper belt. The lawyers would make the money, the bankers would make the money, and American job workers would lose out. Our economic cluster would be not as robust and would be importing cheap goods. Import deflation. And those record profits would keep on going up for the multinational corporations. And there would be mergers and acquisitions. Who makes money on that? On both sides, when it fails and when it succeeds. The bankers and the lawyers. Who fails? The American worker. So he is talking about the paper pushing belt. Now, China is a problem because Wall Street built up their manufacturing capability. You think China would have been able to just out-manufacture the United States by accident? What about all that FDI money that has been flowing in ever since the 1970s? But it really ramped up during George Bush Jr.
Technologically, on AI, this is insanity to talk about going into Greenland. Venezuela?
No. Going into Greenland, buying Greenland, yes. Are we going to go into Greenland? We already have bases on Greenland, so we're already there. But the thing here is that we need to be able to make sure we win against China. And it was the paper pushers that led us down this road. It was people like Joe that led us to this point in time. Now, what are we going to do? Are we going to just keep on pushing paper, Joe? Or are we going to actually build some ships, Joe? Pushing paper? Are we going to fight the Navy of the Chinese, the PLN? Are we going to fight the PLN with a bunch of paper ships floating in the Pacific? Yeah, we can have a whole armada of paper ships. Start folding your paper. Come on, Mika. Come on. Your father was part of the problem, Mika. Start folding those papers that are on your desk. You can make a big ship and you can let it float in the Pacific. And that's going to be the armada against the Chinese Navy. That's what the paper pushers have created. They gutted our manufacturing base. And then he's going to get on a pedestal and say Trump is the one that's insane? How are you going to fight the Chinese with paper, Joe? Morning, Joe. How? Morning, Joe.
You can talk about that. You can justify that action if done correctly. If done correctly. And right now, the military part, again, done correctly. But we don't know what it's going to be like moving forward. And it doesn't look great right now. But Greenland?
My grandfather, who was a CB in World War II, saw Morning Joe he would literally go there on set, tear off his fucking head, and shit down his throat. Because Morning Joe is part of the fucking problem.
Shatters the international order that has benefited the United States time and time again. It's madness.
Analysts believe that Vladimir Putin had two goals with his invasion of Ukraine. One, of course, take the country. But secondly, to really strain and fracture the NATO alliance. And this here is happening. He had nothing to do with it. And if this is already putting pressure on the alliance, everything you just said is right. And the United States, I've been told this is sort of a good cop, bad cop routine. They don't want to rule out military option. I've been writing on this, the Greenland issue, the last couple of days. They want to keep the military option out there as leverage. There's no current plan. There's no concrete steps forward to launch some sort of invasion of Greenland. I think everyone sort of knows that.
Even the words.
I know that's it.
Even the words are damaging. The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal editorial.
What if, just theoretically, Russia started positioning themselves with their navy, or positioning themselves and trying to control the Arctic Circle? Or what if China's doing it? What if it gets to a point where the United States has to take Greenland to be able to do a counteroffensive? So that's not out of the realm of possibility. And believe me, if that's what it takes to keep America safe, all the people that are living in Greenland will be better off as a state. You think they're better off being part of Denmark? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They don't have the GDP to be able to put Greenland into the 21st century. Greenland's not even in the 21st century. It's in the 18th century. I don't like Morning Joe. And I don't like Mika.
Correctly says the words are damaging to America's foreign policy interests.
Even saying those things strains the alliance. That was an extraordinary statement that Mika and I, it happened on our air yesterday. We were talking about it when the leaders of NATO put out, they calling out the U.S. by name repeatedly.
And by the way, this is happening while Jared Kushner is over in Europe striking a deal with our NATO allies to have Britain and France lead a security guarantee in Ukraine, where they would have a military presence in Ukraine. The Europeans are coming together with the Americans. We're moving toward a security agreement that would guarantee the protection of Kyiv's government. And we're talking about Greenland at the same time?
These things are connected because Europe, to this point, has been really reluctant to call out the Trump adventurism when it comes to Greenland because they're afraid of upsetting the president, endangering their role in Ukraine, endangering these security guarantee negotiations. And that's why they felt like the rhetoric the last 4 days was so extreme. They were willing to take the risk.
It's really simple. If we really want to have the Golden Dome and have a very robust defense shield, we absolutely need Greenland. Greenland. It's not even green. It's white. It's white land.
Setting President Trump by putting out the statement yesterday, saying Greenland's sovereignty, Denmark/Greenland's sovereignty must be respected. And I think we will see, though, an effort from the United States, even if military option remains just a threat and not actually something concrete, they're going to put a lot of pressure on there to cash bonuses, stage an election, referendum, whatever it might be, to try to acquire Greenland. And even that, even if there's never boots on the ground, even if there's no military deployed, is going, because Denmark's made clear, Greenland is not for sale. Greenland is not available. So even trying these things is going to put an extraordinary amount of strain on this all too important alliance.
Yeah, right. We would be so much better off if the map showed Greenland at its natural size.
Yes.
So that map looks really big. See that? Look, that just looks so inviting. Yeah, so who wouldn't want that, right? It's not that big.
The president sees that. It's the size of the United States, bigger than the United States. We need to have that.
But
when it's flat on the map. But
exactly.
56,000 people.
We just scratched.
It's about the missile defense and the controlling of the Arctic Circle. That's why we need it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the omega-3. This will help with your cardiovascular health. Take it every day. It'll help to bring down inflammation and help to control your lipid profile. When you do that, you're reducing plaque formation. Omega-3 also prevents overclotting. Vitamin B complex, really important to take if you're 40 years of age or older. The first 4 B vitamins helps the electron transport chain to produce ATP. When you have more ATP, your cells have more energy. Your cellular metabolism will improve with vitamin B complex. And vitamin B complex has vitamin B12 to help to protect your nerves. A very powerful neurostack, clarity factor, gets rid of that brain fog and allows you to concentrate on tasks. Take it every day. Make sure you drink it with filtered water. And when you do this regularly, you're going to improve the dendritic connections between your neurons. You're going to think faster and have better memory. Take it every day. It's a very powerful neurostack. Don't be a morning Joe and Mika. Resveratrol soaks up free radicals, helps the health of your mitochondria, increases energy levels, helps with youthful gene expression, and helps to get rid of cells that are in senescence. And by doing this, your tissues are younger. Your cells perform as if they were younger. And it also helps the basal layer of your skin so you look younger, not just are younger, all right? Age is not just chronological. Age is, there's a biological component to it. And when you take biopsies of different tissues and you measure, let's say, the methylation of your genes, it'll have a certain profile. And some tissues may be equal to your chronological age. Some tissues may be less than your chronological age or more than your chronological age. In different tissues, age at different rates. All right? If you can bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, and improve your epigenetics, you're slowing down the aging process. This is the reason why it's so important to take resveratrol, especially with C60, because it's synergistic. Taking resveratrol is going to help with youthful gene expression. Don't be a morning Joe. All right, let's listen into, oh boy, we got to talk about Mamdani, the local communist from New York City. Napoleon the Pig. Let's find out what Napoleon the Pig is doing on Animal Farm.
Finance the old way. Finance the ramp way.
You ready?
Yeah, come on, let's go. Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights at the DOJ, Harvey Dillon, responded with this. New York, consider this your official notice from the Justice Department. We will not tolerate discrimination based on skin color. It is illegal. Civil rights is paying very close attention. Now, Mamdani responding, he's standing by her. He said, we made the decision to have Sia Weaver serve as our executive director for the mayor's office to protect tenants, to build on the work that she has done to protect tenants across the city. We were already seeing the results of that work. So a couple of points here. She was nominated for the City Planning Commission in 2021. Jamani Williams, public advocate, nominated her. The City Council of New York City would not confirm her because they felt that she was too radical. The tenant protection job does not, it's an appointment. Radical, by the way. It's an appointment. But the Washington Post editorial board, guys, writes this. How she plans to navigate the little problem of constitutionally protected property rights remains unclear. But the elevation of someone with such ugly and racialized views into a position of authority in America's biggest city.
This is why I said when you got these democratic socialists and you have these communists that believe in Marxism, they don't have the theoretical foundation of the Enlightenment. We have a constitutional republic that is predicated on the foundation of John Locke and the Enlightenment. Life, liberty, and property. When you start eroding life, liberty, and property, you're no longer part of the Enlightenment. Marxism is not part of the Enlightenment. It's post-modern. It's a post-modern concept that is antithetical to the Enlightenment. Wake the fuck up.
Mamdani wasn't joking when he said during his inauguration, "No apology for what we believe." And I have one post.
No apology for what he believes.
I mean, if you told me that
He doesn't believe in the Enlightenment. He doesn't believe in John Locke. He doesn't believe in life, liberty, and property. Our constitutional republic is predicated on that foundation. It is in our Constitution. So if you start eroding property, you start eroding the First Amendment, you start eroding the Second Amendment, you start eroding the Fourth Amendment, you start eroding your civil liberties. You no longer have a constitution. Brought to you by Napoleon the Pig. People need to start pushing back that are educated. Now, there are a lot of stupid people out there that don't even know what the Enlightenment is. There are a lot of stupid people out there that don't know who John Locke is. There's a lot of stupid people that don't even realize that we don't have a democracy. We have a constitutional republic. You don't want a democracy because a democracy, mob rules. And the mob can take away your civil liberties on a dime. They can spin around on a dime and just take away your civil liberties because that's what the majority wants. And our founding fathers basically said, we don't want a democracy. We want a constitutional republic that has strong foundations of the Enlightenment. Now, maybe that's a little too lofty of an idea for most people in America because they're stupid. But the bottom line is this. Mamdani, Napoleon the Pig, is literally trying to erode our Constitution. And it's going to start at the grassroots level. These people are not dumb. Napoleon the Pig is not dumb. They know that they can't get their dream of Marxism by doing top down. They got to do it at the grassroots level and erode the cities and make them shitholes.
she says that we are going to have to rethink our relationship with our property, going from individual to collectivism. What does that mean? Are you saying that we're supposed to share our home with people we don't know? What is she saying?
They want the city to take over property. That is the ultimate goal. I'm going to say it now. That's what they want, Maria. They talked about it. Remember, this is the same mayor who said as a candidate that he wanted to tax white neighborhoods.
Yeah. And have you ever heard the phrase POC?
I have.
People of color?
I have.
Okay.
Done a lot of work.
I didn't know that was like used that way. Well, POC. I mean, just say people of color.
When people tell you who they are,
believe it the first time.
You know, I mean, this is not a surprise. This is not new. This is exactly who he said he was going to be. This is the kind of people he surrounded himself with. And a lot of people said, how could this possibly happen? Well, it happened, and here we are.
Maria, I can kind of answer your question here. Something else I found in her 2021.
Okay,
this is an op-ed. Here she wrote, as landlords exit the market using state action to acquire properties and leverage disinvestment to convert thousands of homes into publicly and democratically controlled land housing. She wrote that in 2021. By the way, Eric
So
Adams.
you don't have any rights to your home after you work your life to buy a home. It's your home, and now you're talking about they're going to just redirect it and be governed by the
Well, this is the fairness narrative that so many people have bought into, that it's unfair, that some get and some don't. So let's spread the wealth. He said he was a democratic socialist. This is what he is. This is what he believes. This is what he's going to try and act. I don't think it's going to be possible for him to put it through, but
Well, the Constitution might be a problem.
Among other things.
Wow.
Anyone that voted for Mamdani, you're stupid. You're stupid. You just don't understand. Don't understand economics, you don't understand philosophy, and you sure as hell don't understand the Enlightenment. I'll tell you. And it's only the 7th day of the year. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. Collagen will help with your joints, your musculature, your bone density, your skin, your hair, your nails. Very high quality. Take it every day. This is a month's supply. And also get the Gladiator Barley. Gladiator Barley helps to build strength. So you do some resistance training, build muscle, but it'll also help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals. When you do this regularly, you're helping your brain function by soaking up those free radicals and bringing down that inflammation. You're helping the health of the microenvironment for your neurons. It'll help with your cardiovascular health by reducing plaque formation. Because if you're reducing inflammation at the vascular level and you're reducing free radicals, you have less oxidized LDL. You're helping with your immune system and your endocrine system. So this is dual purpose. Do some resistance training. You don't have to be an Arnold Schwarzenegger. Take this, build some muscle, and help your other systems by bringing down inflammation, soaking up free radicals, and detoxifying your body. Use discount 5. You get $5 off. We can do that because we live in a capitalistic society. But if we have Napoleon the pig that takes over and a bunch of Napoleon the pigs running around, oinking, oink, 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 all over the place, we're going to lose capitalism. So help support capitalism by going to my store and buying the great products that I offer that literally will slow down the aging process for you. Don't be Napoleon the pig. All right, let's go to Bloomberg.
Put out before the American public, why are we there? What are we doing? And that's generating a lot of anger and discontent on Capitol Hill in particular right now. Not clear in the American public, but there's a lot of open questions at the moment. A lot of things in the air, yeah.
That's where the Secretary of State is today, because lawmakers want to know what the heck's going on in many cases. And he did speak to reporters earlier. Let's listen to Marco Rubio.
I'm not going to give you a timeline on it. We wanted to move as soon as possible, but we didn't expect this. It's been 3 days since this happened, 4 days since this happened. So I understand that in this cycle and society we now live in, everyone wants instant outcomes. They want it to happen overnight. It's not going to work that way, but we're already seeing progress. With this new deal that's been announced and more deals to follow, you're already seeing how the leverage the United States has over those interim authorities is going to begin to lead to positive outcomes.
Interesting. Are we going to get a partisan readout on these briefings today? Are Republicans largely with the president and Democrats are not, or is it more nuanced than that?
I don't think it's more nuanced than that. I saw, Rick Scott said there is a plan and it's going to work. Chris Murphy, Democrat of Connecticut, this plan is insane, is what he said. And there's Rubio. It's interesting. He's saying, they're already making progress in Venezuela. What we've seen and what people have reported from Caracas is that there's a new wave of repression from this government. There's counterintelligence officials on the streets, journalists are being arrested, people are, remain afraid and destitute. So it's not clear, and this is just one more thing that Rubio is going to have to manage. I mean, the Washington Post had on one of their articles that he's now the viceroy of Venezuela, which I thought was a good moniker of a kind.
A lot of memes out there.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about the president's mindset, or I guess what's occupying his mind here with all of this happening, because I suspect there'll be more tankers that we're talking about. First, hire John Harbaugh fast. He and his brother are total winners. President DJT. I guess that wasn't about anything here. How about this one? Remember, for all those big NATO fans, he writes, they were at 2% GDP and most were not paying their bills until I came along, all caps. This was at, what, 9:45 this morning. It's a long one. If you're with us on YouTube, you can see a good chunk of this. He talks about NATO membership, how, of course, well, I guess NATO might hire Harbaugh, CC. But then he refers to ending 8 wars, and he says, in Norway, a NATO member foolishly chose not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize. I guess that's how we're going to frame that. But that doesn't matter, he says. What does matter is that I saved millions of lives. And now we go to all caps. Russia and China have zero fear of NATO without the United States, and I doubt NATO would be there for us if we really needed them. Everyone is lucky, still all caps, that I rebuilt our military in my first term and continue to do so. We'll always be there for NATO, even if they won't be there for us. The only nation that China and Russia fear and respect is the DJT rebuilt USA. How much of this is true?
I think there is a lot of continued sort of Euro baiting from this administration. We saw in that national security strategy, seems like eons ago now, where they bizarrely just came out and just attacked Europe on all sorts of weird, cultural issues, immigration, disappearing European civilization that faces erasure and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's popular. It seems like it's kind of a joke. And right now it's unclear whether, the stuff he's saying about Greenland, which has sort of motivated this tweet about NATO, because the Danish prime minister was like,
end of NATO.
Yeah, this will end NATO if you attack, Denmark and Greenland. It's just strange. It looms as a sort of distraction. We had some comments from Mike Johnson today talking about Rubio and this briefing, seeming to joke that Rubio was talking about buying Greenland again from Denmark. So there's a lot of...
It seems like we're not joking so much about it now.
I don't think the Danes are treating it in a joking manner.
Caroline Levitt, in the briefing room right now, asked about this, discussing what Greenland purchase would look like. And on military...
I wanted the word cuppa as in cup of tea. I thought it would be great to mix with hug. When I saw the domain was available, I was like, I'm taking it.
The leaders to take on the population. It would not be consistent, and I'll let the President's National Security
White House press conference.
I know they are well aware and tracking. Kelly?
2 questions. One, on the seas vessels, the Bella, the Sophia, can you tell us where they're headed, what happens to any existing cargo, and you reference personnel potentially facing prosecution? That's one thing I'd like to follow on. And
On the Bella.
Yes, okay. And on Annie's question, if I can also ask, does the administration believe that the interim regime should release all political dissidents and prisoners and return detained Americans?
That's not a question that I've personally spoken about to the president with, so I will let him answer that question. I don't want to make new policy at this podium today with respect to Venezuela. With respect to the 2 ships that you mentioned, I spoke with you about the Bella 1. There was another vessel this morning, the Sophia, that in coordination with the Department of War, the Department of Homeland Security apprehended it. This is a stateless, sanctioned, dark fleet motor tanker, and this occurred without incident. This vessel was operating in international waters and conducting illicit activities in the Caribbean Sea. The U.S. Coast Guard is escorting the Sophia to the United States for final disposition. To answer your question, Kelly, directly, this was through Operation Southern Spear. The Department of War is unwavering in its mission to crush illicit activity in the Western Hemisphere. And as the president has repeatedly stated, we're going to defend our homeland and restore security and strength across the Americas. Dasha.
All right, for the ones that are watching the dashboard, oil as she started her press conference, oil has broken $56, so it's $55.98 right now.
You just said the president has answered that question, so I will reiterate what the president has said a few times now to all of you, which is that it's too premature and too early to dictate a timetable for elections in Venezuela right now.
Carolina, you just talked to Jackie about diplomacy first, right? The Danes have repeatedly said they're willing to collaborate on all of the concerns that the president has, whether it's more troops, mineral rights, intelligence sharing. Why does the president feel he needs to own mainland and not and put out the threat of military action when this could be done through diplomacy?
Well, who said diplomacy isn't taking place behind the scenes, Sasha? I mean, the president is interested in diplomacy. His national security team is as well. And of course, he's always willing to pick up the phone for everybody and hear out their concerns. But the president is the president of the United States of America, and he's always going to be very clear about what he views as being in our nation's best interest. Reagan.
Caroline, I have a question for you on Venezuela, and then I'd love to ask you about Minnesota and Tim Walz.
Sure.
On Venezuela, I'm wondering, does the administration hope to start sending more Venezuelan migrants back home, or have them self-deport if the situation in the country improves?
As far as I'm concerned, the policies of the Trump administration and the Department of Homeland Security have not changed. All those illegally present in the country are subject to deportation. And I would just like to add how we got here. The president was very clear on the campaign to the American public, and it's one of the many reasons they resoundingly reelected him back to this office, that he was not only going to crush foreign drug cartels, but that he was not going to stand by and watch as the illegitimate Venezuelan regime was sending illegal criminals and gang members and rapists and murderers to our country, which happened to the tune of thousands under the previous administration and president. And so there could be nothing more America first than this operation that took place last week. And I would just remind all of you in this room that there were innocent Americans like Jocelyn Nungare who lost their lives at the hands of dangerous Venezuelan criminals who were sent here by the Maduro regime. And that has been the president's North Star and guiding principle throughout his entire policy since January 20th.
Tim Walz, Minnesota. Does the administration believe that Tim Walz potentially dropped out of the governor's race because he could be under criminal investigation?
I don't know if there's a criminal investigation. If there was, I wouldn't be able to comment on it from up here, to be honest with you. But I think Tim Walz probably dropped out of the race because he realizes he no longer has the support of the people of his own state, which is a remarkable downfall considering he was the number 2 on the Democrat Party's ticket just about a year ago. When it comes to Minnesota, the fraud that we have seen, the wide scale of fraud is really remarkable. It's egregious. I would encourage every single journalist in this room to go to Minnesota and to cover it yourselves. As for the Trump administration, we have officials who have been on the ground almost every day. Secretary Noem was there yesterday. Secretary Bessent will be traveling there later this week to talk about the fraud and to do a roundtable on this very topic. And I would just like to leave you with an update. To date, the Department of Justice has charged 98 total defendants in several Medicaid fraud and related case programs. 64 were convicted, and 85 of the 98 charged were of Somali descent. The DOJ has also issued over 1,700 subpoenas, executed over 130 search warrants, and they have now added more attorneys to their office there to absorb the case flow. DHS is on the ground going door to door, conducting large-scale criminal and HSI investigations. They have also sent approximately 2,000 agents to Minneapolis to assist with law enforcement and immigration enforcement. As I said, Secretary Noem was on the ground yesterday. The Department of Health and Human Services has also begun requiring a justification and photo evidence for all child care related payments nationwide, and they required Minnesota to conduct a full audit of all child care centers. They also froze $185 million in funding to Minnesota. And Dr. Oz, who was just here, also notified Governor Walz they're going to begin auditing Medicaid recipients and deferring payments on claims based on waste, fraud, and abuse. The Department of Labor is also conducting a targeted review of Minnesota's unemployment program. Department of Agriculture requiring Minnesota to conduct recertification for SNAP recipients, and HUD has launched investigations into the public housing. SBA has also suspended nearly 7,000 borrowers amid suspected fraudulent activity. So with all of that, rest assured, this is an all-hands-on-deck effort from the entire administration to get to the bottom of this and to ensure that the ripping off of taxpayers in the state of Minnesota, and it won't just be Minnesota, it'll be any state across this country where fraud has taken place. And we are protecting law-abiding, tax-paying American citizens. Phil.
Thank you, Caroline. Just to follow up on Greenland.
We're going to go back to, I'm probably going to go to BBC on this oil tanker. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lignans. Lignans will help with your immune system and your endocrine system, bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. When you do this, you're slowing down the aging process. Ashwagandha root controls cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels, brings down inflammation, slows down the aging process, boosts up that immune system. And turmeric brings down inflammation, soaks up free radicals. When you do that, you're boosting up your immune system and your cardiovascular system. So a very powerful stack to help with your immune system, your cardiovascular system, and bringing down inflammation at your brain level. Take the turmeric, the lignans, and the ashwagandha together. Very powerful stack. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 to get $5 off. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
Well, let's stay with this and more breaking developments because the Ministry of Defence have just made a statement in the last few moments confirming that British Armed Forces provided support to the US operation to seize the Nanera tanker, including RAF surveillance and a support ship. That has come from the Ministry of Defence. That is the vessel that they are talking about, one of the two.
So the Brits helped.
Australian tankers that have been seized. Let's go straight to Westminster, straight to our political correspondent, Jack Fenwick. Jack, tell us more.
Yeah, that's right. We've had confirmation in the last few minutes, as you say, that the UK did provide support to US forces when that operation to seize that tanker was happening. Now, I don't think it comes as a huge surprise when we sort of started hearing that the US may try and seize this tanker in the last couple of days. There have been questions asked about whether the UK could potentially be involved, given whereabouts in the world that tanker was. We've just had a statement from the MOD. They say UK armed forces provided pre-planned operational supports. They were involved in the planning stages before that operation as well. They say that RFA Tide Force provided support to the American forces. Now, RFA Tide Force is a vessel that's often used to provide logistical support to the Royal Navy. And they also say that the RAF provided surveillance support from the air, so British planes being used there as well. We've also had words from the Defence Secretary, John Healey, in the last few moments. He said today our UK armed forces showed skill and professionalism in support of a successful US interception of vessel Bella 1 while on its way to Russia. He said this action formed part of global efforts to crack down on sanctions busting. Now, as I say, these questions have started to be asked of the UK government, whether they were involved earlier in the day. At lunchtime today, there was a briefing from Downing Street officials for journalists. So that happened just after Prime Minister's questions, when the news was just breaking that the US had launched this operation. Now, at the time, the Downing Street officials weren't providing any details. They were saying that they were not able to talk about the operational activity of a third country, even if that was involving them using British bases. But we have just had that confirmation in the last few moments that the UK was involved in that operation, but claims being involved and involved in the pre-planning stage as well.
Jack, I've got the full statement in front of me now from the MOD, and it includes assessments as well. And it says that the Bella 1 is sanctioned by the US under its counter-Iran sanctions aimed at stopping Iran from fueling instability in the Middle East. So they point to that. They also talk about recent assessments showing that the Bella 1 have been involved in illegal activity linked to the international terrorism and crimes, including Hezbollah, as part of a web of rising shadow activity that fuels and finances nefarious activity across the globe. So in a sense, repeating, and it's no great surprise, repeating some of the main lines that we've heard from the Americans.
Yeah, as you say, I think given they have confirmed that British forces were involved, it's not a surprise that they are going to repeat the lines used by the Americans. But I think also, we've got to see this into the context of the sort of various events that have happened in the last few days. Remember, when it came to the US launching that action in Venezuela a few days ago, the UK haven't criticised that, but also were very keen to say that UK forces were not involved in that. Now, obviously, with this is a different matter. Now, that may well be because of geography. We know that that vessel, that tanker was, pretty close to the UK. That's why those questions have started being asked. But yeah, very much echoing the sort of language used by the United States when justifying why it was right to get involved in this action today.
Jack, thanks very much for the latest there from Westminster. I just want to go back to Texas. That round table that I said was just about to get underway. There, indeed it has. I just want to put the sound up and hear if she already is referencing this operation.
Perpetuated fraud of our benefit programs and programs that were created to serve the most vulnerable people in our country. To give
I'm going to go to Bloomberg now.
You were on one of the late night shows last night. How did that happen? What went down there?
It's the Daily Show. Their producers sit around all day watching us, Charlie, and they're going to put you on there next, I think. But
why
it's
is
always
the
nice to
Daily
know
Show
that people
tonight?
are watching and listening.
Exactly. Anyway, I was shocked when I saw you on social media there, Joe. Well,
Yeah.
You know what? I shouldn't.
Well, I was. You think you were shocked? I heard from people I haven't talked to in years. Charlie Pellet will be back with more on the markets in 20 minutes, so he's not a state guy. We've established that, and that's fine. Because they turned, did you see this? They flipped the food pyramid upside down. This is coming out of the White House today. They literally took the food pyramid and they turned it upside down. I thought this was, a spoof or something at first. So if you're a big steak eater, or if you're like Charlie, you got the chicken, it's at the top of the pyramid now. All of a sudden, I am the healthiest guy in the world. We'll turn that for you on YouTube and show you the upside down coming up. One of the other big stories, of course, we're following beyond the food pyramid and the upside down is what's happening outside of Venezuela. And of course, that's where we started the program here. We want to know what people are thinking about this. We've been talking, you know why they put us on the Daily Show is because I was asking the panel about what MAGA thought and whether this would create a split in MAGA. Jon Stewart thought that was funny because nothing, he says, creates a split in MAGA. Well, what does everyone else think? Domestic headwinds, the headline at Ipsos in the context of Venezuela. Cliff Young is with us as always, and we're going to go through some of these numbers here because they're very important. With us from Ipsos, where he is the chair of U.S. Public Affairs, also a professor at Texas A&M University's Bush School of Government and Public Service. And I want to mention his new book, Nativist Nation. Cliff's been a busy guy here. It's going to be a big 2026. Populism, grievance, identity, and the transformation of American politics. That's why we have him. Good to see you. Happy New Year.
It's great to be here.
Larry David says I only have 3 days to say that, but I'm still saying it this week. So let's talk about it. Some folks think this is America first. If I go down the MAGA road here, because the oil's coming here, it might bring prices lower. President says secures the hemisphere. What does the general population think?
Well, first and foremost, lots of shock and awe over the weekend. This was something that obviously called the attention of all of America, all Americans. Ultimately, though, I think it's too soon to know. And when you look at the data, just across the board, nothing specific, but across the board, there's a lot of Americans, a third of Americans are undecided. There's no consensus about why we went in. That's still to be determined, at least from a public opinion standpoint.
That's a problem.
And so I would say there's a lot more questions and answers at this point. What we do know is it's an issue that divides the nation. 1/3 are in favor, 1/3 are against, and 1/3, as I said before, don't know. There's no consensus, like I said before, on why we went in. Republicans think it was because of narco trafficking and drugs. Democrats because of oil. It's probably a combination of the two, but there's no consensus there. But at the very least, all Americans, whether you're red, blue, or somewhere in between, you're purple, you are worried about overexposing America in one more conflict.
Yeah.
The forever wars have left their mark. They're there in the consciousness and the psyche of America. And I think there's a lot of concern in public opinion today.
Well, we're showing on the screen now, if you're with us on YouTube, if you're listening on Bloomberg Radio, we're talking about becoming too involved. This is one of the questions that you asked. Really interesting. Concerned that the U.S. will become too involved in Venezuela. All Americans, 72%, among Democrats, 90%, but also more than half of Republicans and 74% of independents. Isn't this partly why Donald Trump got elected, was to not get too involved in places like Venezuela?
Yeah, America First during the campaign was anti-interventionist.
We're already in World War III. That's why it's happening.
Ultimately, that's why we're seeing the concern. When you do focus groups with Americans, they do cite Afghanistan and Iraq over and over again. Wow. They see those as huge errors made in the past, those that where we lost a lot of treasure and blood, sweat, and treasure, right, ultimately. And it weighs still. But once again, if you peel away the onion, there's much more Republican support for this intervention than there's Democrat or independent support. I don't see it in the short term splitting the base. I think that was one of the questions that ultimately you asked.
Yes, right.
Yeah, I see it more in the shortest of terms having a very localized rally around the flag effect. That is, not all Americans are excited about it. It doesn't move the numbers that much, but with the Republican base specifically, it at the very least diverts attention away from some of those other complicated issues like Epstein, like affordability, like the midterms.
I haven't heard the name Epstein outside of yesterday when I guess DOJ says openly, we've only put out 1% or something like that, but nobody's talking about it. This really has changed the topic for better or worse. Cliff Young, when you think about Republican support for this, I want you to listen to what John Bolton said to us yesterday. Not a huge fan of Donald Trump, but he served in the first administration and he was involved with Maduro and Venezuela. He doesn't see the payoff here when we think about exit strategy and whether this is worth it. Listen to what John Bolton told us.
I think that the administration has acted in an ad hoc, day-to-day fashion. That doesn't guarantee failure, but let's be clear, if the objective is to turn Venezuela into a society where its people actually govern it, and maybe that's not Trump's intention, but if that is, they're a long way from it. And anybody who thinks the Venezuelan oil industry is going to emerge from the ashes in a matter of weeks or months or even a couple of years doesn't know how bad the situation is.
Okay, that's a problem, right? For people to, when you talk about Afghanistan or Iraq, if there's no payoff there, 2 years from now, if we're looking back at this costing Americans, that will change perception. But it brings us as well to motivation. And you asked people about this, and I think you referred to it. Let's look at the actual numbers. The fact that oil was motivation for the action. All Americans, 51%. Democrats, 73%. Only a third of Republicans believe it. The president's saying it openly. They stole our oil. We're going to take it back.
Yeah, but this is a narrative that's been around for a while. If you kind of peel the one onion away and you listen to it over the last few years, on the right, among conservatives, the argument was about narco-terrorism.
That's right.
And I think that's how Republicans today frame it. That's a position they're coming from.
So the oil is just kind of an ancillary benefit.
I think in many Republicans' minds, yes, if you kind of look at the data. But once again, what was hammered home over time, over the last few years, is this narco-terrorist state. My daughter was a narco-terrorist, a head of a narco-terrorist state, and they took them ultimately out. But as we said before, there isn't a consensus in America today. There was no effort, obviously, by the administration to bring America together and define the reasons why we went in, and we see that reflected in the data today.
Let's talk about more broadly here approval ratings, as we always do. We've got a new year. Seems like new year, same old problems, but let's call it a clean slate. If that's the case, Cliff Young, Trump sees no bump so far.
Nothing so far. I mean, obviously, we have to wait a bit as this issue, this event, sort of takes its time to percolate through the psyche of America. But I don't think there'll be a bump. There might be some crystallization on the Republican side, on the MAGA side. There was a fight going on internally about a number of issues, and that might bring them together, but no real bump. He's in the low 40s. That's where he was before Christmas, the holiday break. That's not a terrible place to be. It's not a great place to be. The inflection point is 40. When you get below that, it becomes very difficult in a variety of ways. I think most critically, this action does not change the priority set in America today. Americans are worried about what? They're worried about jobs. They're worried about affordability. They're worried about healthcare. Indeed, over the last 3 months, healthcare has gone from a tertiary issue to number 3 in the United States today.
That's what Democrats want to hear.
Yeah, and they're worried about the cost of it. That's not good for the midterms. So these domestic issues, I would say, are really still the kingmakers.
Yes.
And unless we get bogged down in slogging it out in Venezuela, I don't see that as becoming a central issue.
So it doesn't make any sense what he just said. Tertiary means 3. Tertiary, 3 degrees of separation. If he's saying that insurance is the third, is the third top concern, well, that is tertiary.
And women in harm's way, but really it's going to be about domestic. That's far-fetched a bit, that scenario. What really is going to be important are those domestic issues.
We have become pretty complacent with this extraordinary military that we have, just pulling off one feat after another. We're not used to being shot back at very often anymore, are we?
Well, yeah, well, not lately, right? I mean, we also are not. We don't have a lot of patience, because these sorts of things take a long, long time, right? Ultimately, if you think of Japan and Germany after World War II, it wasn't 1 generation, it wasn't 2 generations, it was 3 generations. You need a lot of longevity that way. But what we know based upon experience is that as the body count goes up, your approval ratings go down. And so that's how, if at all, Venezuela will have an impact on the midterms.
That's something else. So I think what we've learned here is it's time for the president to get back on the road, right? I mean, we ended last year with the beginning of a roadshow about affordability. We've just spent the last 3 weeks talking about Venezuela, Maduro, and just about everything but.
Yeah, I mean, what's very interesting, it's just we track actually the social media feeds and sort of the content of them. And leading up to the Venezuela action, it was all about Epstein.
Yeah, okay.
And it hasn't been at all since then. And so, that's a victory in the short term, but in the long term, they need to get back and talk about those things that matter for people.
Congratulations on the book, and it's great to see
you.
A regular here on the program for a good reason.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. This will focus on different systems of your body. It'll help with brain function, help with your cardiovascular health, help with musculature. It will rev up your metabolism and increase your energy levels. And when you take this regularly, you're going to slow down the aging process, boost up that immune system and your endocrine system. Take this every day. It's a month's supply. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even just with milk. I mix it with hummus every day. But take it every day, boost up those energy levels. You're going to feel the effects of this within 72 hours. You're going to have a steady burn of energy, and you're going to be able to concentrate better. You're going to have more vitality. You're going to be more energetic. And then when you apply a holistic approach, proper diet and exercise, proper sleep, learning new things, drinking filtered water, staying away from processed foods, when you apply this holistic approach, then you're going to slow down the aging process. So please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. This is very important to take every day, and you will slow down the aging process. Now, I have a new product on my store. It's called collagen. Not collagen, collagen. Now, you can take this with the collagen, or you can take it separately. It's up to you. But collagen will help to remodel joints that have been injured, right? Either because of a sports injury or just getting older. And it will help to use the collagen 2 and your ACAN to remodel the joint. It will also help to keep inflammation down and suppress certain enzymes that cause the inflammation. All right? So it's going to bring down inflammation. It's going to help to remodel the joint. You take this every day, all right? And there is a dropper here. You take 2 drops, 2 full drops each day, and drink the filtered water. This will help to remodel your joint and bring down the inflammation that reduces the degeneration of the actual joint. See, if you have chronic inflammation at the joint, then what's going to happen is that your cartilage will actually deteriorate. We want to stop that. And by stopping it, you're going to allow for the ACAN and the collagen 2 to help to remodel the joint. All right? Do a little bit of resistance training, not heavy, very light resistance training. and you slowly are building up the muscles. You're slowly strengthening the bone in that joint, and you're slowly improving the elasticity of the tendon and the ligament, and you're remodeling the cartilage and providing the cushion through ACAN. Because you have the cartilage, but that joint is also in fluid, in a gel, and that you need ACAN to help with that cushioning effect. This will also help to suppress some of the pain receptors that are being activated when you have this chronic joint pain. All right, so you're going to be remodeling, reducing pain, and reducing inflammation by taking this. So go to my store and get the collagen. I have a bunch of infographics on the website to explain to you in detail what the mechanisms are. This is very powerful, and you can stack this with the collagen. But it's important to do light resistance training. Not heavy duty because you'll damage the joint, but light resistance training and taking this, and even better if you stack it with the collagen. That's very powerful, very high quality. So please go to my store and start getting healthy. Alrighty, let's listen in. I want to listen into CNBC just released another take on the Venezuela oil production.
Other bet being made, and this is about whether President Trump is going to try to take over Greenland, and if so, how. He has those designs on the island. His announcement that Venezuela will be sending tens of millions of barrels of crude oil to the U.S. The other big topic of the morning in Washington. We're going to go over to Amy Jowers right now, who's got the latest on Greenland, Venezuela, and so much more, sir.
Yeah, good morning, Andrew. President Trump announced last night on social media that the interim authorities in Venezuela will send between 30 and 50 million barrels of oil to the United States. This oil will be sold at its market price, and that money will be controlled by me as President of the United States of America to ensure it is used to benefit the people of Venezuela and the United States, the president said. I have asked Energy Secretary Chris Wright to execute this plan immediately. It will be taken by storage ships and brought directly to unloading docks in the United States. That from the President of the United States last night on social media. Now, it's not clear whether this is to be a one-time payment or an ongoing program, and who exactly the President concluded this agreement with in Venezuela. White House officials did not respond to our questions about the President's post last night. Now, separately, guys, as you mentioned late yesterday, the White House raised the prospect of using military force to take Greenland from Denmark and make it a U.S. territory, a move that threatens a direct confrontation between two NATO allies for the first time in history. In a statement, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said, President Trump has made it well known that acquiring Greenland is a national security priority of the United States, and it's vital to deter our adversaries in the Arctic region. The president and his team are discussing a range of options to pursue this important foreign policy goal. And of course, utilizing the U.S. military is always an option at the Commander-in-Chief's disposal. Now, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen Tuesday responded to this increasing belligerence from the Trump administration, saying, I believe he means it, and adding, the international community as we know it, democratic rules of the game, NATO, the world's strongest defensive alliance, all of that would collapse if one NATO country chose to attack another. Now, the Wall Street Journal guys reported Tuesday that Secretary of State Marco Rubio told lawmakers in a closed-door session that the bellicose comments don't signal an imminent invasion, but that the administration's goal here is to buy Greenland from Denmark. Now, those comments from Marco Rubio came up on Capitol Hill in that closed-door session before we saw that on-the-record statement from Caroline Leavitt raising the prospect of military action. So you do get the sense that at least rhetorically, the White House and the State Department are not entirely on the same page here, guys. Back over to you.
Damon, let's go through both stories for a moment here. Let's go first on the oil front. Is it possible that there's an agreement with anybody in Venezuela about this oil? Who ultimately has to refine such oil? What would be the...
Would refine it? Well, just said the oil.
I understand that, but the question is that we're just commandeering. We're commandeering the oil and sending it here, and then we're handing it. We're just handing it to which company or which companies? Who? How would this even begin to work?
All of that unclear, Andrew. And as I say, the White House didn't respond to my questions last night about this. One of the big sort of first principle questions is, what is this a payment for? Right? Did the United States agree to anything on its side in exchange for this oil? And we just don't know that. We don't know who this agreement was struck with. Was this the now acting president of Venezuela, Rodriguez, who signed off on this deal?
But do we believe it was signed off on?
To anything in exchange for
do we think there was a signed off deal?
This is a repeat from earlier in the show.
And the canned green beans. I'm feeling healthier all the time here. Gonna have to tell my mom about this. Put the new upside down pyramid on the fridge. Steaks for dinner again, kids. But of course, this vote has to do with much more than eating healthy. It has to do with healthcare premiums after the Obamacare subsidies from the COVID era. You know this by now. Expired at the end of last year. And there's a vote, as I mentioned, looming here to do something about it. Speaker Mike Johnson is not a fan of extending subsidies, nor is the president. We heard from the speaker earlier. Listen.
Because this week, the House is going to advance, as you heard, the next set of the FY26 appropriations bills. We're going to continue our strides to restore regular order around here and get back to the appropriations process. We're not totally there yet on the full, what you would fully call regular order, but my, we pushed this boulder up that hill.
Don't fool around with Rick Davis when it comes to regular order. He knows the difference. We assemble our political panel now. Yes, Rick is with us. Our Republican strategist, Bloomberg Politics contributor partner at Stoneport Capital, and there's J.D. Shanzano, democracy visiting fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center, Bloomberg Politics contributor. I guess we're all on the keto diet together here, guys, but Rick, I'm wondering your thought on this and whether this vote, if it's convincing enough, will actually create some momentum in the Senate, or lawmakers are simply focused on funding the government right now.
Well, if they don't pass these subsidy improvements, people are going to have to watch what they eat because they want to stay healthier longer, because they certainly can't afford health care. So I'm trying to tie that food pyramid into the debate. Look, House has got a lot of action right now because of the discharge petition. But I really think it's the Senate that's got the leverage. Who's moving his agreement forward in a bipartisan fashion. And I think that the discharge petition passing, especially if it's close to 25 or 30 Republicans on it, will give impetus to the Senate to get their deal done. But I think we're going to wake up one day and find out we've solved for the ACA subsidies with a bill out of the Senate that's just going to squash the House, and that's how this is going to get solved.
You see that as well? Jeannie, there are Democrats who put forth this discharge petition, and a couple of Republicans, a handful at least, who hope that this sparks some momentum in the upper chamber. Will they be disappointed?
Joe, I am still trying to wrap my head around this upside down Stranger Things food pyramid. My mom has been yelling at my dad to stop eating steak every night, so this is really going to upset her. It's very confusing.
My mom told me just last week to stop eating steak every night, which I don't do, Jeannie, but now I can. So I think the world just changed.
I am still with your mother, Joe Matthew, not steak every night, please. I think when it comes to the issue of the Affordable Care Act subsidies, I think it is another showcase in terms of the difficulty the Republicans are having here, which is that no Republican wants to start 2026 off, a midterm election year, talking about an issue that now for decades, quite frankly, has befuddled them, dragged down their polling numbers. So this is enormously problematic for Republicans. I agree with Rick. I think it is possible, although who knows at this point that they may get a deal out of the Senate. This thing will surely pass the House, may get a deal out of the Senate. And it is stunning to hear Donald Trump yesterday telling Republicans, you know, have a little flexibility on this whole Hyde Amendment thing. Don't worry about that so much. This is a nightmare, quite frankly, for Republicans. To Tony Fabrizio's point, if they don't resolve it now, they have big trouble in the midterm, and it's still up for grabs whether they get this thing resolved.
Well, again, it's procedural today, so that'll tell us a lot about, I suspect, what happens tomorrow. We're going to be counting these votes for good reason. You know, the president's set to sign an EO later today, and he just put a post on Truth Social that might give us a better sense of what we're going to be talking about here. You might have just seen this headline cross the terminal, and I'm sneaking up on both of you with this. Trump pushes to ban institutional investors from buying homes. How about this? The Post reads, for a very long time, buying and owning a home was considered the pinnacle of the American dream. Right. It was the reward for working hard, the doing the right thing. But now, because of the record high inflation caused by Joe Biden, he says, and the Democrats in Congress, that American dream is increasingly out of reach. So he says, I am immediately taking steps to ban large institutional investors from buying more single-family homes, and I will be calling on Congress to codify it.
Yep.
This
I think it's a good idea what he's doing.
The State of the Union, right? He says people live in homes, not corporations. And we'll discuss this topic and more at my speech in Davos in 2 weeks. Interesting, we're looking at Invitation Homes right now. The ticker is INVH. It's fallen hard, down more than 5%. It looks like a cliff on the chart here. Rick, is this a good move?
It's a great move. BlackRock has been buying in suburbia single family homes and building up a portfolio where they're going to rent them out. And what has been happening is they've been buying it at a premium, bringing up the price of the homes. Well, if you're a homeowner, that's great in that area. But if you are a renter or you're trying to purchase a home, everything is elevated. BlackRock, we should have never allowed private equity companies coming in to buy in mass across the country homes. So I'm absolutely for what Trump's doing. Trump is totally right. Home prices have elevated and rents have elevated because of private equity.
Index. And this is one of the ways that getting back into that affordability message without having to deal with inflation or any of the other issues that we normally associate with it.
Right. Jeannie, this is a pretty big deal, and I'm watching these stocks move here. Lennar is down about 2% now, lower the
BlackRock is another
I mentioned Invitation Homes, the biggest owner of single-family rental homes in the United States. It's down now over 7%. Is this an issue that Democrats will wish they had seized on?
It is really nice to see Donald Trump realizing that affordability is not a hoax and coming along with the rest of us to address issues of affordability. Absolutely, this is a good move. It's something that should be done, but it's not the be-all and end-all. It is one aspect of a very critical issue, particularly, by the way, for young people, many of whom can no longer buy their first home before the age of 40. I mean, it is really, really difficult. So absolutely the right move. Democrats should embrace it and call on the president to do more, because at the same time he's doing this, he's also feeding the big oil companies. He is, enriching his own pocket. He is not addressing in a way we need health care. There's a whole litany of affordability issues which are driving down his polls, as you were just talking about with Cliff. So this is a good move, but it's one start in a much longer step he's going to have to take to wrap his head around affordability.
The first thing that popped into my mind beyond the politics here, by the way, Invitation Homes is now down 10%. This is wild. This is the biggest intraday loss since July of 2024. Rick, this is the beginnings, I'm guessing, of assembling the State of the Union address, right? Whether that lands at the end of February or at some other time here. These ideas start percolating at the beginning of the year and could help fulfill his speech.
Yeah, I think you see a lot of sort of test running going on, especially in the sort of post-Venezuela environment. He's got to try to walk out some domestic activity so that it doesn't look like he's only focused on international affairs. He wants to warm up the crowd before his State of the Union so that he can talk about, what he's doing to make things more affordable. And housing is a real key component to that. I suspect he will go to the American dream and what he's doing to, make sure that the American dream is available to everyone. And this will be a core component of that.
American homes for rent now halted for volatility, down 8%. The S&P Composite 1500 Home Building Index
What just happened is huge.
Lows as well. This is having a pretty dramatic impact already. Jeannie, is this something that Congress will in fact codify?
They have to.
They absolutely could. I think there would
They
be
have to.
widespread support on the Democratic side, depending on what the bill looks like. And Republicans, surely, if the Speaker/Majority Leader of the House and Senate, Donald Trump, says to do it, will go along with it. And so I think it could absolutely get through. Again, depending on what the actual wording of the bill looks like. I would like to see it, by the way, go through Congress as opposed to an EO. An EO is an okay step. But as we know, those things are easily pushed back on. So I think the legislation would be the best way to get this done. I don't know if Donald Trump is going to be pushing for that, but he absolutely should.
Well, he does say in the post here, I will be calling on Congress to codify it, saying that I'm immediately taking steps to ban large institutional investors from buying more single-family homes. We've seen this work a couple times pretty easily, Rick. Is Mike Johnson writing that bill now?
He's down to one vote margin in the House. I don't know how the Democrats are going to react to wanting to vote for a Trump EO. And I put a lot of credence on the lobbying capabilities of these large institutional investors who have now seen their stocks go tanking as a result of this. So my guess is this is going to get fought over. Not going to be an easy resolution to it. It's a great political hit for today for the president. To change the topic and to talk about affordability his way. But I think getting this done the way he's done it before in a Congress that's got slimmer margins than they did ever before is going to be hard.
Really interesting moment here as we learn in real time. That's why you join us live here on Bloomberg Radio with Rick Davis and Jeannie Shanzano. Our great panel will come back in our second hour as we welcome our global television audience to the conversation. We bagged 2 more oil tankers today. We'll have the latest on Venezuela straight ahead, only here on Bloomberg.
Your company's workflow could be as smooth as this. Warsaw, the smoothest, easiest.
Macro is crude oil prices are going down. It's a bear market. It's what the Trump administration wants. And the curious part is the methods he's using. That's just entertaining to watch. And everything I see is he's going to get what he wants to get crude oil prices lower. So what I think the good news is to people who like to be bullish crude oil, which typically doesn't go up and stay up, is I think we're getting towards the lower end of a low price cure stage, which means maybe around $42 a barrel if history is an example. But anything up and any bounces, 65 would hold resistance. The bottom line is, as our colleague Javier Blas has pointed out, the whole America, from North America down to South America, become a price maker in crude oil and in commodities, and taking that away from, they used to be a price taker, which is that's the way the trend is at the moment.
Okay, so we have control over our destiny. We set the price as opposed to receive it and have to contend with it. The president says Venezuela will send anywhere from 30 million to 50 million barrels of oil to the U.S., worth about $2.8 billion at current market prices. Is 50 million barrels a lot? It sounds like a lot.
Well, it's not really a lot. Let's put that in context. The U.S. and Canada combined have a net surplus of about 8 million barrels a day. And that's compared to a deficit of around 2 million barrels just 10 years ago. So it's the trend that's happening. A lot of those barrels that were going to China will not be going to China anymore. And that's the key thing. This is a lot more geopolitical now with the Trump administration asking Venezuela to push away from China and Russia and Iran. But the bottom line is crude oil in the bottom is heading lower, but it's not just crude oil. The weakest commodity so far, one of the weakest commodities so far, this is natural gas. I'll give you a headline. In about a month, you're going to be able to say natural gas, the front contract is around $2 per MMBTU. That April contract is 2.8. Just a month ago, it was 4 as we cycle down in natural gas. So it's the whole area, all the energy complex is heading that way. We're on the bottom is the key question.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up my GLCO page, Global Commodities, and it breaks it down between energy, metals, and agriculture. It's a great screen. Henry Hub, natural gas, that's been at north of $4 for like a long time. It's $3.50 right now. So it's happening, right?
Right, and that's the winter contract, that's the front contract. But the contracts, Paul, that's anticipating those tulips coming up in New York, those are the ones that are going to get hammered. So just when you report it in, hopefully about 2 months from now, Mr. Trump will be delighted to hear you're going to be able to say 2 handle on natural gas versus just a month ago for that front contract was closer to 5. But that's the key thing is natural gas we had a colder than normal winter last year, and increased that demand, but now we're realizing the trend in global warming is probably consistent.
My daughter is being treated for leukemia. It hit me hard. It did. Being a girl dad, it really just melted my heart.
It changes everything.
You just...
Now we want to get to Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Secretary...
Live from Washington, D.C., this is Balance of Power with Joe Matthew and Kaylee Lines.
The U.S. bags 2 more tankers. Welcome to the Wednesday edition. As the U.S. seizes an oil tanker that escaped the Venezuelan blockade somewhere south of Iceland before another sanctioned vessel in the Caribbean was seized, with President Trump now announcing plans to control future sales of Venezuelan oil. And there's more today. The president just now calling on social media to ban institutional investors from buying single-family homes. I'm Joe Matthew alongside Tyler Kendall, who's in for Kaylee today live in Washington. This latest move here by the president is moving stocks, Tyler.
Yeah, Blackstone, other home builders' stocks are sinking on the news, and it read to me like a direct message from President Trump to those members on the Senate Banking Committee and the House Financial Services Committee, because he wants Congress to codify that. And we have a member of one of those committees coming up, Congressman Brian Stile of Wisconsin.
That's going to be a really interesting conversation. We had a lot of other things we wanted to ask him about. This just emerged in the last 15 minutes, as you heard live here on Bloomberg. Moving stocks around, Heritage Homes falling to session lows, as you mentioned, Blackstone taking a hit on this, but also housing stocks like Lennar and like Invitation Homes, the biggest owner of single-family homes for rent. All of these are being impacted at a time, Tyler, when affordability remains the biggest issue in Washington.
Right, and you were talking about this last hour on Balance of Power, but it is very clear that this White House wants to coalesce around a message of affordability, and perhaps this could be a preview to the State of the Union address that we could get from President Trump, since he says that he'll detail some more of what this could look like during his address to Davos in a few weeks.
So we're workshopping the State of the Union for sure. This is moving markets, obviously, but so too is our activity in Venezuela. We'll be looking at oil prices as well. And we're going to talk to Colonel Wayne Sanders, of course, from Bloomberg Intelligence, about everything we need to know about the seizure of these tankers and apparently the delivery of some 50 million barrels of oil, as the president said this morning.
Well, for that, let's just get right to it and head to Charlie Pellet in New York at World Headquarters for the latest on the markets. Hey, Charlie.
Thank you very much, Tyler. Lots of moving parts to this market. Let us begin with crude oil, certainly a focus for investors at this hour. West Texas Intermediate crude tumbling now by 2.1%. Brent, the global benchmark, down by 1.4%. If you want to recap and reset on those headlines involving the home builders, you guys broke the news moments ago. President Trump pushing to ban institutional investors from buying homes. In a post on Truth Social, the president said, quote, "I am immediately taking steps to ban large institutional investors from buying more single-family homes, and I will be calling on Congress to codify it." Blackstone certainly affected, with shares now tumbling by 5%. Among some of the other home names, Invitation Homes down now by 5.9%, and among the home builders, Toll Brothers down 0.9%, KB Home down 3.1%, Pulte down 2.1%, and Lennar right now trading lower by 2.1%. Again, developing story. We did get that tweet moments ago on social media from the president. We'll have a whole lot more coming up right here on Balance of Power, and of course, Bloomberg Television and Radio will be covering this story throughout the day. Stocks stocks trading mixed right now, with the Dow now lower by 191, down by about 0.4%. We do have the S&P higher by 10, gain there of 0.1%. Yes, a record right now on the S&P. Nasdaq up 151 for the Nasdaq Composite Index, gain there of 0.6%. The 10-year 4.13%. Spot gold down 1%. 44.50 the ounce, and Bitcoin now down by 2.2%, 91,136. So again, repeating on West Texas Intermediate crude, 55.86 a barrel. WTI down 2.2%. Home builders selling off, and right now we do have shares of Blackstone trading lower. Blackstone down by 5.1%. Balance of power continues right now. Back we go to Washington once again. Your hosts Joe Matthew and Tyler Kendall.
All right, Charlie Pellet, thanks so much. As Charlie mentioned, I'm Tyler Kendall here in Washington alongside Joe Matthew, where we have been learning more all day from other U.S. officials after President Trump yesterday announced that Venezuela would relinquish up to 50 million barrels of oil to the U.S. And we had just in really the last hour, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt outlining a little bit more. She says that the U.S. is selectively rolling back sanctions to facilitate the transport and the sale to the global oil market. But in terms of a timeline, that's still perhaps an open question. Here's what Secretary of State Marco Rubio told reporters on Capitol Hill earlier.
I'm not going to give you a timeline on it. We wanted to move as soon as possible. But we didn't expect this. It's been 3 days since this happened, 4 days since this happened. So I understand that in this cycle and society we now live in, everyone wants instant outcomes. They want it to happen overnight. It's not going to work that way. But we're already seeing progress. With this new deal that's been announced and more deals to follow, you're already seeing how the leverage the United States has over those interim authorities is going to begin to lead to positive outcomes.
Brings us to the headline of the terminal. U.S. seizes 2 more ships as Trump tightens Venezuela quarantine. One of these ships we chased halfway around the world. This is the one that escaped the blockade a couple of weeks ago in the Caribbean and made it almost all the way to Iceland, where we intercepted and boarded the ship earlier. That's where we start our conversation with Colonel Sanders. He's back with us today. It was one of the first names we asked for. Wayne Sanders, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Defense Research Analyst, and of course, retired Army Colonel. It's great to see you, sir. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
I can't imagine what it's like to be on these boats when the helicopters come down on the deck. Can you give us a sense just what it's like to be the captain of one of these vessels when you see America coming in your rear view mirror? What do they do when they land on the boat?
So first thing, if you're that captain and you actually see the U.S. Coast Guard from behind you, you then see AC-130 gunships flying over your head, along with something called an P-8 Poseidon, which is a sub-hunter.
Yes. Okay.
These are all going around you and then the UK is also involved.
So you're in a real busy space all of a sudden.
Absolutely. And then all of a sudden now you are going to have a helicopter that's coming and you're having U.S. troops board your vessel to be able to take over. But they did it in a great way in terms of the title and authorities on how they actually did it.
Okay.
The Coast Guard being involved in this instead of U.S. Navy personnel boarding the boat allows it in terms of that law enforcement, the maritime law enforcement piece that's really going back into the sanctions indictment for this.
And that sort of ties to what we saw in Venezuela, right? When we hear the administration talk about executing a law enforcement action. Can you just talk to us about how critical that difference is when we're talking about actually going out, seizing, what it means for the implications for our military?
No, absolutely. So these were sanctioned vessels that dealt with black market oil, crude oil. And so as such, right, the difference between the Coast Guard and the Navy, if the Navy does it, it ends up having a much higher level escalation on the public stage. So the fact that the Coast Guard was the one that was following this vessel, they originally tried to board the vessel, a couple weeks ago, and then started following it, and they waited. The U.S. waited to board this until this point. Becomes key because it's not an act of war at that point in time. You are looking at it more in terms of the law enforcement side. The blockade stays in put. The skipper that was boarded a couple weeks ago, as well as then today, you've got the Marinera as well as the Sophia.
Yeah.
So they're doing this under the law enforcement side. The Coast Guard is playing a pivotal role.
It's really interesting. This video that we're showing on Bloomberg TV and on YouTube is wild. Taken with night goggles, I guess, or night vision here, as you see them climbing the stairs up to the bridge of this ship, and you see right now, if you're watching, the helicopter coming down on the deck of this boat. There they are climbing the stairs. Colonel, did they knock or did they knock the door down?
Well, I think at this point in time, they're looking for rules of engagement. Were probably very clear before they actually boarded that boat.
Okay.
So it's probably a no-knock warrant.
A no-knock warrant.
That allows them to be able to go in and be able to do that. They've already provided entry at that point in time. They're already on the vessel.
Okay.
So at that point in time, what is going to provide them with the most force protection to be able to, and they always do it with the least amount, right? Escalation of force. So they're going to start at that lower level. And if you're that captain on a vessel, I think at that point in time, you've been followed by the Coast Guard, you've got the gunships ahead. I don't think you're going to do this, right?
Leading up to this, we saw what appeared to be an escalation by Russia, right? They had sent a submarine to escort one of these tankers. Does this action by the U.S. risk inflaming those tensions between the U.S. and Russia? What do those sorts of communications look like between Washington and the Kremlin? Are there communications?
There were, because Russia came and said that they were concerned about the fact that the Coast Guard was following along. But the U.S. comes in and talks about the fact this was a stateless vessel up until that point. This is not this is not a Russian flagged vessel. When they avoided, when the Marinera, back then actually it was called the Bella One.
Yes.
When the Bella One tried to get down to the blockade, when they turned around, they immediately started to paint a Russian flag on the side, and then they provided the registration paperwork to Russia. Now, Russia normally actually inspects and does formal pieces before they actually register a vessel and flag them underneath theirs. They did not do that in this case. So then when the Russian submarine is coming up, they're the ones who actually provided a Title 10 military action, if you will, compared to the U.S. Coast Guard Title 14 or under Title 18 under law enforcement authorities. Both of those, that escalation actually came from Russia. So I think when looking at the political calculus on that was, hey, look, we still boarded the vessel using our law enforcement authorities.
Sure.
But yes, the fact that the Russian was there did have to play into, okay, is the Russian submarine going to engage?
So what do we think about that? You mentioned that P3 sub Hunter. Do they bug out when they see hardware like that when the United States is around, or does that draw submarines to the sea?
Well, I think at that point in time, I don't know whether the indicators and warnings for that submarine knows that they're actually being seen or watched or tracked by a PA Poseidon. But those sub hunters do end up playing a very critical role.
Wow. See, I was looking forward to this conversation all day. We just learned a lot from the Colonel. There's only one, Colonel Sanders.
Really fascinating. Wayne Sanders, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Defense and Research Analyst. Thank you so much. And to continue this,
please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. You can get it in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, or an 8-ounce configuration. You can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, and MCT coconut oil. It needs to be in an oil for proper absorption. Take it on an empty stomach, preferably, for best absorption. It's cheaper if you buy the higher ounce configuration because it's cheaper per ounce, So you save a little bit of money if you buy the higher ounce configuration. Again, you can get it in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, or an 8-ounce configuration. This will soak up free radicals. It's 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. Now, it's going to soak up the free radicals, reduce the stress in the cell, improve the health of the mitochondria, and boost up your energy levels. So the cell's going to perform properly. Your tissues are going to perform better. Your organ systems will perform better. Your immune system and your endocrine system will perform better, even your brain function. It's going to boost up the ATP at the neuron level, improve the health of the mitochondria at the neuron level, and your neurons will produce the neurotransmitters to improve cognition. So you'll be thinking faster, you'll have better memory. In addition, by soaking up free radicals at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. C60 stacks really well with resveratrol to help with the basal layer for your skin. So your skin is improved and healthier. Now, take C60, you'll start feeling the effects of it within 2 months. You're gonna have more energy. Your systems will start to perform better, especially your endocrine and your immune system. And within 1 year of taking it every day, teaspoon a day, you're gonna look younger. So please go to my store, get the C60. You can get it in MCT coconut oil, avocado oil, and extra virgin olive oil. That's the end of my broadcast. Make sure you go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. Please share the links and see you tomorrow.